talking me all wrong. It's the wrong tone.
Is it time?
It is time for us to do what we have been doing, and that time is every day.
We'll know in a very short period of time, but it looks like it could be something that will be not good. Believe me, not good.
I see issue with that. And again, hey.
You're not going to be able to insult your way to the presidency. That's not going to happen.
I don't know who created Pokemon Go. But I'm trying to figure out how we get them to have Pokemon go to the polls.
I'm Ted Cruz, and my pronoun is kiss my ass.
So when you think about it, there is great significance to the passage of time in terms of what we need to do to lay these wires, what we need to do to create these jobs.
America is a nation that can be defined in a single word. I was going to put him.
Not good. Believe me, not good.
Hello, dissidents. Welcome, one and all, to a Thursday morning due edition of the Due Dissidents podcast. Almost said Sunday. When you think mornings, you just think Sundays. You don't think Thursday morning. You think Sunday morning. But it's Thursday morning. It's a work day. We are up and at it for all you.
Curled up with that New York Times magazine.
Exactly. Right. Doing a crossword puzzle that's impossible to do. Have you ever gotten anywhere
watching
near?
George Stephanopoulos.
That's right.
Screaming about Jill Stein.
Hey, have you ever gotten close to finishing a Sunday Times crossword puzzle? They're almost impossible. They're very hard.
Yeah, I've never really bothered.
Uh-huh.
Okay,
yeah, so for those who don't understand, so the New York Times crossword puzzles increase in difficulty throughout the week. So the Monday one is the easiest, and then by the time you get to Sunday, it's almost impossible to do. Yeah,
I didn't know that.
Only the real liberals are smart enough to do the Sunday Times puzzle. Only Cy Applebaum can do the Sunday Times.
To be able to do the Sunday Times, you have to have been watching Meet the Press since Tim Russert was on.
Yeah. Yeah, you have to have read all of Project 2025. You have
to have read it cover to cover. You have to have read the Star Report.
Yeah, right. Yeah.
That's how good you have to be. No, for me with crossword puzzles, okay, so there's a gap in my education. I didn't really go to school after the 7th grade until college. So the things you would learn in junior high school and high school, like spelling, I can't explain to you grammar. My knowledge of grammar is purely intuitive from reading a lot. Like I could not explain to you how grammar works because I missed that part.
Yeah,
by the time you go to college, they're not teaching that.
When Russ used to send me the drafts of his articles, which he still does from time to time, you haven't really made this mistake recently, but you would very often mix up the its with the apostrophe and non-apostrophe.
Right.
Very often that would be wrong.
The reason it doesn't happen now is because I made a point of actually going and finding out exactly what is it, because I never really knew. And it's the kind of thing that you wouldn't just pick that up intuitively from reading. You pick up intuitively from reading order of words and parts of speech. You'll pick that up. But something like that, it's just like, why would you?
Well, not only is it not intuitive, but in this case, in this example, it's actually the opposite of intuitive. It's counterintuitive because the apostrophe usually connotes a possessive tense. You know, it apostrophe s. You know, it's hair, you would think it would be IT apostrophe F because the apostrophe usually is a possessive thing, but no, it's the opposite. It's with apostrophe is it is. Yeah. So
I
now it's a lot easier because now when you send me a draft, I trust that you have that right, so I could just copy and paste it and hit publish. I don't have to actually go through and read it for a fifth time.
You know part of why that got better.
Or first time.
Yeah, this is funny. I started to actually learn the technicalities of how grammar works to help me learn Spanish. I got a book about Spanish grammar for English speakers. And in the course of studying that, you just learn the concepts of grammar. Like, oh, well, that because it's comparing English grammar to Spanish grammar.
Right. Huh. Interesting.
So I started to say, oh, so that's why you do that.
Huh. Yeah. That's interesting. All right, folks, we have a lot to get to today. We got a nice crowd in here for the morning. 562 strong in the YouTube chat, 432 strong in the Rumble chat. So let's smash that like button and get some people in here. That's very important. Smash that like button. Let's wake everybody up and get them in here.
Tumble out of bed and I stumble to the kitchen, pour myself a cup of ambition.
That's right. We got to wake everybody up. Wake up, wake up, wake up.
This is Thursday morning is our Friday, basically.
It's our Friday, half day Friday. I like being done before noon on a Thursday.
Yo, nice. Last week, all right, most of you, this movie, it's an art movie. It's not going to be playing in your town, although it's a Netflix production, so it'll probably come on Netflix. Last week, I treated myself. Once we were done with the Thursday show, I went and got some pizza. You know, I'm on a diet. I'm not having a lot of pizza these days. And I went to see a movie called Athena. It's not what you would think from the name. It was the name of a housing project in France. And this whole movie was basically a 13-year-old Arab had been killed by the police, supposedly. There was questions about it. So they're having a press conference talking about how they're going to find the officers that did this. And the kids from the project just throw Molotov cocktails at the press conference. The rest of the movie is basically this very handheld verite back and forth running battle between the police and this fortified housing project. This hyper real, just back and forth pitched engagements between the police and the people in the project. Especially if you're curious about how these Muslim communities function within these European societies, within France, what it's like. And basically, if you're American, you're going to watch it and you're going to say, well, this is their African Americans. This is their Latinos, the economically dislocated, disenfranchised population of France, or Muslim Arabs. But really, really fascinating and very well done movie, if you get a chance to see it.
All right, Athena. I'll keep an eye out for that when it comes my way. All right, we got some stuff to get to today, folks, so strap on in. Thank you guys all for being here. Hit that like button, share this out. Let's get a nice crowd in here this morning, but we're going to get started now with some material. Russell, this is your piece to start things off.
Okay, so hey man, they got that missile system over to Israel in about 5 seconds, right? Wow, that's not easy. That's not like you call FedEx and they bring the missile system over. That takes a lot to send a missile system that's going to be really effective against incoming attacks to Israel. Billions of dollars. We just sent more money to Ukraine. But now, Congress is out of session right now. So the disaster loan program is exhausted, and gosh darn it, there's nothing they can do about it. Well, what are you going to do? They're on vacation. The nation's loan program for disaster survivors has fully exhausted its funding, the Biden administration announced Tuesday. And lawmakers, the only ones who can greenlight more funding, are slated to be out until after Election Day. Without congressional action, the Small Business Administration can't make new loan offers to people trying to rebuild businesses and homes hit by disasters like Hurricanes Helene and Milton. Speaker Mike Johnson has repeatedly said he does not intend to call lawmakers back to town, before the scheduled November 12th return. However, saying over the weekend that it would be premature to gavel back in to approve emergency disaster aid before states have calculated their recovery needs from the two hurricanes. Wow,
yeah, we wouldn't
man.
want to just send them too much, God forbid.
We wouldn't want, hey, these people they work hard.
Right.
They're on vacation. What do you expect them to all fly back and approve emergency disaster aids? This Congress made up of millionaires and billionaires? You expect them to be inconvenienced for the peasants?
Well, the
How
excuse
dare
is that
you.
it's campaign season and that they're campaigning. But of course, Congress has what, a 90+% reelection rate. So like fewer than 10% of these races are competitive at all. It's not like they have
Well,
to be away.
and that's no excuse in and of itself.
No, but I'm saying even if that were an excuse, it's really not, because all you would have to do is call back 40 or 50 people. You wouldn't even need them. Even if you had enough bipartisan support to get hurricane relief, which you would think you would, then just call back the 250 of them who don't have to campaign and let them vote. Everybody else can just miss the vote and they'd still have the majority and vote the aid through. Like, there's no reason why they can't get half of them back to vote yes.
Yeah, well, or if Russia suddenly advanced a few hundred miles, I bet they'd be back.
Right. Yeah, they'd be
Congress
back. Yeah,
to approve
exactly.
more aid.
Yep.
After learning that the loan program was depleted, Johnson said in a statement Tuesday that there's no question these devastating back-to-back storms have stressed the SBA funding program. Well, that's good of him to acknowledge that. He acknowledges it. He's not going to do anything about it, but he acknowledges it. But the Biden-Harris administration has the necessary disaster funding right now to address the immediate needs of American people in these hurricane-affected areas, the speaker continued. Congress is tracking this situation closely, and when members return in just a few short weeks, not to be confused with the long type of weeks.
Right,
these are going to be the short type.
The short weeks. The good news, folks, is that these are short weeks.
These are short weeks. These are not, they have 7 days,
right.
But according to Einstein's theory of relativity, these weeks that occur in October are shorter perceptually than the long weeks, the dreaded long weeks.
Right.
The administration should have an accurate assessment of the actual dollar amount needed, and there will be strong bipartisan support to provide the necessary funding. Some Republican lawmakers have publicly indicated they would be more open to returning if agencies said they were out of money. Without calling lawmakers back to the Capitol, congressional leaders could use their brief pro forma sessions to pass an emergency funding bill for the loan program. But any lawmaker could block a request for passage without a roll call vote. Representative Jared Moskowitz has already introduced a bill that would provide SBA, he's a Democrat from Florida, would provide SBA with $8 billion for disaster loans, stressing that Congress should have proactively funded that agency and FEMA before going on a months-long recess during hurricane season. When you're right, you're right. President Joe Biden said in a statement Tuesday that Johnson has promised that this and other disaster programs will be replenished when Congress returns. He urged Americans to continue to apply for the loans. Without a refill, the agency must halt all new loan offers, but can still do some prep work like initial processing of loan applications. FEMA, on the other hand, is still expected to have enough funding to last until after Election Day, even though the agency has blown through nearly half of the $20 billion Congress approved for the Disaster Relief Fund in late September. FEMA Administrator Deanne Criswell warned last week that she might have to pivot to covering only immediate needs with money in the Disaster Relief Fund earlier than anticipated. Criswell has predicted that she would need to switch to that cash conservation mode in December or January, pausing all long-term disaster recovery efforts like rebuilding on Maui after last year's wildfires. But last week, the administrator warned that she's going to have to assess that every day to see if I can wait that long. The more than $20 billion Congress cleared before they left in September does not fulfill any of the emergency disaster aid requests the White House has sent over the last year. In June, the White House requested $4 billion in extra disaster funding to respond to tornadoes, wildfires, and hurricanes, as well as the rebuilding of the Francis Scott Key Bridge in Baltimore. That unfulfilled request builds on the White House's year-old plea for Congress to provide $23.5 billion in extra disaster aid. Now, in this age of seemingly bottomless wells of foreign aid for military adventures in Ukraine and Israel, this is just maddening. And there's a pattern. When it comes to what the American people need, even in the face of a disaster, something that there's no ideological split on, like school funding and educational curriculum. There's no debate about disaster funding. Even on that level, it's go get your fucking shine box. Even on that level, anything that the American people need, it's always a problem. It's always an issue. And for anyone who thinks because they talk the language of populism that the Republicans care about the average people. Look at this. And that's, we're not Democrats here, but look at this. Who controls the House? Who controls the House? The Republicans. The Speaker is saying, hey, these are the short weeks. These aren't the long weeks, so don't break our balls. We're campaigning right now, which, as Keaton points out, most of us are not in danger of losing our seats. The idea that they would come back from recess, he's presenting that like that's just crazy talk to expect Congress to come back. And as the congressman who put forth that $8 billion bill pointed out, why didn't they do this before they left? Why didn't they do this before they went on recess? Like, why would you leave it in that state? They wouldn't do that to Ukraine. They wouldn't do that to Israel. They would never go on recess without making sure the war zones have all the funding they need. The American people, go fuck yourself.
Well, yeah, it's funny. I got a personal extension for my taxes this year, so I just had to file my taxes because the extension deadline is October 15th. So I think an interesting policy change that's really worthwhile, as long as we're figuring out what our list of demands is going to be moving forward, in 2025 and beyond. How about moving tax day to the middle of hurricane season? I like that idea very much, because imagine if tax day fell during hurricane season. Imagine if millions and millions, hundreds of millions of Americans had to file their taxes now, when the government that you're funding with your taxes is saying, we wish we could get the aid out the door, but you're going to have to give us a few weeks because we're on recess. I think tax day should fall in the middle of hurricane season. That would wake a lot of people up, and it may even light a fire under their ass. Because I guarantee you, I'm serious, like if people had to pay taxes at this moment, you would see a lot more unrest.
Well, yes. This is, people talk, and we're going to be showing a little bit of our interview with Jill Stein. We talked a little bit about the world after the election in terms of building Muslim solidarity. That'll be on the full interview. But yes, in terms of our project, I think really what we need to do is develop a list that people can coalesce around of what we are demanding. And one of the tactics might be tax strikes.
Tax day during hurricane season. That's a start. Tax day should fall during hurricane season. Let people have to pay the government. Let the government coerce people into funding them when they do this, at the moment they do this.
I've known activists who purposely kept their income, their reported income anyway, below the level where you'd have to pay federal taxes. Made sure never to have more reported income than that so that they wouldn't be funding these wars.
Right. It's an interesting idea, too. Well, now, look, Trump might help you with that, with the no tax on tips. We can all just go out and shake a cup in the air. Right?
There you go. Everyone can become a tour guide, a waiter, bartender.
Everybody could become a panhandler. That might be a good economic model. Just everyone go out and beg for money from the people who have it. If you live in New York City, they say there's too many homeless people. I say there's too few people begging on the streets. I think people who have apartments should be begging on the streets. I think everybody should just flood the financial district and ask these rich fucks for money. Just line the streets. Yeah, just line the streets. That's perfectly legal. You don't hit them, you don't threaten them or anything. But why aren't there like thousands of people lining the streets of Wall Street every day? So as these people head into work, they have to walk through thousands of people just asking them for cash. Why not?
There's only one problem with
in
this
Trump's
scheme.
America. They won't even have to be. That will be untaxable income. No tax on tips. That's a tip.
Well, you're making a case for voting Trump.
Yeah, there you go.
The problem with that scheme is I could tell you as you have when did you leave the city?
2017.
Yeah, so you haven't lived here in 7 years.
Yeah, I left right when it was on the way down. Like the real heyday of like Bloomberg era New York was when I was there, 2012 to 2014, 15.
Right.
And then it started, you got a sense of the decline right as I left. And then once I left, obviously the bottom fell out. I was holding that city up on my shoulders.
It was you. The Wall Street people, they do not go to the stock exchange anymore.
Yeah, I know.
It was on that trajectory, and then COVID, that was it. They all went to Florida. When you came back after COVID, I was working for a company for a while when we first started to be able to work again that did Wall Street tours right at 9. The market opens at 9:30. So if the brokers are there, you're going to see them. Nothing. You got that few people who wound up buying those condos there after 9/11, walking their dogs, a little smattering of that, and tourists, and that's it. There's like no stockbrokers there anymore.
Yeah, but I mean, they still have some of the companies down there. They
have some. They'll do some meetings there. Yeah. They'll do the ceremonial IPO bell ringing, but it's ceremonial. It's ceremonial mostly. Like the real trading people have their Bloomberg terminals at their offices. They don't need to go there anymore.
Right.
You want to see that? Go rent trading places.
Yeah, there you go. All right, Hillary Hinton saw a billboard on westbound Pennsylvania Turnpike yesterday with 2 words, fuck Israel. This made me as happy as possible while being forced to fund genocide. Fuck Israel, indeed. I think I saw that. I think there were some pictures that were tweeted out. I think it was like one of those digital billboards that was hacked that showed it on there. That's what I think.
Oh, really? Oh, really?
Yeah.
Oh, very
Abiding 71. CJ, formerly from RBN, had it right. Morning Joe and corporate media are Hunger Games level out of touch. Indeed. Thank you, Abiding. Appreciate that.
Damn right.
Eric Rousseau, remember the TV Guide crossword puzzles? I do, actually.
I do remember that from when I was a
young
kid.
I do remember them.
Yeah.
All right. Eric Rousseau, thanks for the $2 super sticker over on YouTube. We are without Jake this morning, but we are with Jake's app so we can field Rumble rants and super chats. Those are super helpful, so thank you for sending those over. JM, thanks for the $2 and the thumbs up. Appreciate that very much. Okay, we are going to take a quick pause here for a little PSA of sorts. Obviously, the Gray Zone's Jeremy Lafredo is not being detained in jail anymore, but he is forbidden from leaving Israel as he faces charges, and he got some advocacy from the most unlikely of places, actually. RFK Jr. says, my commitment to Israel's security and survival is absolute. So is my dedication to press freedom. Interesting. I thought, when I first saw this, I thought this was going to be some pretzel logic defense of Israel as a democracy, but he goes on to say, that is why I'm calling for the freedom of American journalist Jeremy Lafredo, who was detained while reporting in Israel. Having worked with Jeremy at Children's Health Defense, I know him as a tenacious and professional young reporter. I urge the U.S. State Department to work for his immediate return home. There you go. So some unlikely advocacy there. And, of course, we just want to put out the word again. Once again, obviously, he is out of jail, but not yet out of the woods. So there's the phone number. There's the email address for those listening on the audio. It's JerusalemACS@state.gov. +11 972 2630 4000. That's if you have international dialing. You can make a phone call, but email works as well. So make sure you do that. And interesting tweet there from RFK. I guess all aspiring journalists should start working for the Children's Health Defense. This way he'll have their back when they get in trouble.
Yeah, see, this is one of those things, and hey, man, I'm very glad he's doing it, and this is where I think, purity politics, where you really set yourself up in a position where you can't work with people on areas of agreement is foolish. Hey, man, if RFK wants to help out Jeremy Lafredo, great. It's unfortunate he has to personally know a reporter for him to call out Israel this way, because a lot of reporters have been detained and killed by the Israeli state without a word from RFK. But good on him for getting involved in this particular instance.
There you go. And there, once again, is the information. We plan to know more about this in a few days. According to our sources, we should know more about this more definitively by the Sunday night show. So we will bring you an update then, of course. Okay. All right. Let's go.
But if you haven't already, please call or write to the embassy. Put pressure on Israel. Let them know that people are watching.
Absolutely. 100%. All right, folks, it's the morning show. We like to have a little fun on the morning shows. We like to do at least one or two lighter segments for a morning show. And boy, did we get a good one this week. Did we get a good, fun segment this week?
Yes, we did. Everybody's favorite debauched turned Christian apostle, Russell Brand. This is him, of course. The egg is often considered a symbol of Christianity. I'm sure that's what he's referring to there, and not at all Suge Knight's revelation of the hard-boiled egg test.
Nah, mate, it's an Easter egg. It's an Easter egg. It was an Easter egg party. Yeah.
There is no way that egg has traveled up Russell Brand's anal passage.
I didn't quite understand the symbolism of the Easter bunny. I still don't, if I'm to be honest. But they were having an Easter party. This was the beginning of my conversion.
Boy, were they surprised where I hid my Easter egg.
And, it's colored brown for a reason.
It's that symbolizes coming out of the earth, you see.
Yeah, the earth.
It's the resurrection.
Story. That's our story anyway.
So Russell
certainly couldn't come out of anywhere else.
No, nothing to see here. All right, so Russell Brand, this is my own footage. Some of you might have seen it in another segment. But just to remind you, so Russell Brand, he got accused of sexual assault. And a lot of us feel, and I still feel, that was done to shut him up. I still believe that's why. Because if you look at how many of these Hollywood criminals run around without any kind of accusations, I don't think it's a coincidence that they singled him out that way right when he was really gaining a lot of traction as a kind of anti-war left spokesperson. But boy, did he convert fast after those accusations came out. So here's a little bit of my own footage that I shot at Rescue the Republic.
May I pray, Lord Jesus Christ, in your holy name, that all Americans of all cultures and colours and persuasions come together in your name. I ask, Heavenly Father, for a new era of peace, that Satan be cast out in your name in all his forms, but in particular in the bizarre, Kafkaesque, Huxley-esque, late Orwellian form of totalitarianism, bureaucracy in the name of care. Lord, I ask for true republicanism and true democracy, that every individual may feel their freedom to open-heartedly engage in discourse and conversation with one another in good faith.
Yeah, so that there is what we call barking at the moon.
Bark at the moon!
Yeah, that is, he is really singing for his supper there. All right, so, of course, somebody like Russell Brand, this famous hedonist, suddenly turns to Jesus. Now, to be fair, I've known a lot of addicts who turn to Jesus. It's a pretty common thing. It's almost a cliche thing of former addicts to turn to Jesus. Usually, I find, this is my personal experience, I don't know if there's a formal study of this, I find a lot of times they turn to Jesus when they first quit, And then later on, once they're kind of out of the woods, they let it go very often. Like they need it to get over that hump. They need some kind of focus or religious community. But if there was any question about whether Russell Brand is a true convert or a miserable grifter, some might say he cleared it up. Now, apparently this ad dropped April 9th, but WAG, internet WAG Will Sommer, dropped it this week, and it really gained traction because somehow this slipped beneath people's radar, including, I guess, the organizers of Rescue the Republic. Not that I think they would really give a shit. Grifting is not a bar to entry in that crowd. But let's see, Russell Brand selling you literally a magic amulet with a straight face.
I'm just back from Narnia, where I had a holiday, Mr. Tumnus, Aslan, all those guys. And as you know, airports are places full of Wi-Fi and all sorts of evil energies. Think of all the phones out there, all of the signals, corruptible and corrupting. Luckily, I wear this magical amulet from AirTech that keeps me safe from all of the various signals out there. And also means, look at this, look how strong I am. I think this is making me more powerful, as a matter of fact. Look at that. This stuff is absolutely packed with AirTech. I didn't even bring any socks or toothbrush or dog meat or anything like that. Just completely full of AirTech. You should get one as well, particularly if you're planning to go to an airport anytime soon, because the bloody things are full of lethal signals. AirTech, a glorious amulet to protect you from corrupting signals.
Okay. All right. So he is selling you a magic amulet to protect you from the deadly signals emanating from the air around you. Not even like a special. Really, the move for him is to sell a cross that blocks these dangerous, harmful signals. He really needs to combine these. I think. I mean, that's
redundant, is it not? All
next.
crosses block dangerous, harmful signals.
Well, yeah, right. Why not just sell a special crucifix? Is that just going to be too on the nose?
Yeah.
Too grifty? I don't see how you could really be more grifty than this. I don't see how you get more grifty than that.
Well, especially given the price of this thing.
Yeah. According to Will, he's selling it for $239.99 per amulet. I mean, this is where and I tweeted something about this. I guess once you've had an egg shoved up your ass by Diddy, the shame disappears up there along with the egg. Because you got to be pretty shameless to be hawking this stuff. So this fella, who I think he has a YouTube show doing tech reviews, so he did a service, just a few highlights. He did a long thread investigating this piece of tech that Brand is selling to his audience. I've done a zeptosecond of Googling about Russell Brand's magical amulet, and I physically must share with you all what I have found. I am so sorry for the journey we are about to take together. And there's Evan at Backlog Reviewer. I gotta go full screen with that. Brand specific brand slit my throat of 5G deflector appears to be the LifeTune Mini on some heinous little rat boy necklace of some kind. This thing is, from what I can tell, a resin keyring that retails for 200 euros a pop, or buy two for a mere 370. Who could resist? So yeah, so 200 euros, that would be about $240, I guess. That's the difference. But I thought to myself, there's got to be some science behind this. And wouldn't you know it, the Our Technology section gives a breakdown of just this very thing in the form of a handy graph. So you got that, folks? All very scientific.
There you go. It all checks out. I mean, that looks convincing to me.
That's it. Hey. That's better than the science behind the jab, right?
Look at that.
Yeah, no, come on. Who could resist? See, I started this segment skeptical, but now I'm convinced.
Yeah, now I see. Radiation source, squiggly lines.
Right. Squiggly
to the
lines.
Transformer, to the straight line, to the person with the arrow pointing back. That's the whole ball game right there, folks.
That's the whole ball game. if your parents didn't teach you about the deadly squiggly lines, you just weren't raised right.
It takes the squiggly lines and it straightens them out and it lets the body bounce them back. Any questions?
And that's it. It makes you squiggly line proof like Superman.
It straightens out your squiggly lines. Everybody needs their squiggly lines straightened out every once in a while.
See, the world is full of kryptonite.
Yeah.
If that wasn't enough, and I really hope it wasn't, there is also a whole metric heap of garbage jargon, which even appears to cite a source. The source is unfortunately a link to a definition of the term coherence on a Russian encyclopedia, but a for effort. Okay, so yeah, this is what Russell Brand is trying to hawk to the gullible. This is the most, so the responses are pretty savage. This is the most blatant grift I think I've ever seen. Quote, think of all the phones out there, all of the signals. What an asshole. I'd sooner go back, senior PowerPoint engineer, I'd sooner go back to washing dishes for 50 cents above minimum wage before I would be caught dead doing a promotional spot for this. That's always the question with these things, right? Like, how much money do you need? Do you have no shame, no dignity? See, this is the problem. Once you get in a certain position, you got a lifestyle to maintain. You know, your nut expands with your wealth far beyond what you actually need to survive. So your idea of how much money you need becomes very distorted. It's not how much money you need, it's how much money you need to play in the same circles as the wealthy.
Well, Russell Brand's nut certainly expanded with his wealth.
It certainly did. One might say he busted it.
Yeah.
He busted that nut.
Yeah.
Whilst he wears a mic on his chest that uses Wi-Fi. So some of you will have seen this. I played it on the intermission last Sunday. But for anyone who didn't see it, there's a very funny guy, Munya Chihuahua, did his take on Russell Brand's supposed conversion.
I don't like Donald Trump because he's an ethereal gladiator of justice protecting the fickle fabric of the universe.
Russell, the allegations have just come out.
I'm Christian. I've been redeemed. I'm forgiven. That's good timing, isn't it?
Well, Mary was a bit of a sore, wasn't she?
Russell, the allegations.
Oh, yeah, hallelujah. Well, what do you think about these new Instagram handles? I've got BAB, Born Again Brandy, GWR, Goody Woody Wassle.
What about the essay?
Shining Apostle. Love it. Praise him.
Russell?
Yeah?
We need to talk about the allegations.
I can't, sorry, it's getting to the clappy-wappy bit of Shine Jesus the Shine.
But Russell...
Yeah, sorry, I've got one more. What was that? What do you think of this baptism pic?
I think people should have a choice whether they see you in your underwear.
Should they? I better get off to confession then.
Russell,
yeah?
The allegations...
I can't, I'm afraid. I'm reading Deuteronomy 30:16. Totally appropriate gap, by the way.
Russell?
Sorry, I'm just converting someone on the phone. Can we do what in tongues, you cheeky minx? Pray? Yeah, that sounds great. A furious, flamboyant, feminine wizard?
No, Russell, this is wrong. You can't just conveniently convert to a religion to shield yourself against things you've done wrong.
Sorry, God's on the line. What's that? Signal's not very good. All right, God, stay on the prayer. I'm just going to step outside.
Russell.
Go very far away.
Russell!
Yeah, so this is, it's just sad. It's just sad. All of our heroes wind up eventually becoming just grotesque parodies on the left, just grotesque parodies of what they had been. I honestly, we were talking about this because our friends, the Zago brothers, they gave everybody those great shirts, those great posters. Feel like I can't wear it now because Russell Brand's on it. You know what I'm thinking about doing? I'm thinking about just taking permanent marker and putting an X across Brand, and then I can wear it.
Well, you could just make a game out of it. Just cross people out.
I've thought about
as they fall.
I thought about that too.
Like Back to the Future, where the family members fade out of the photo. Can answer that too.
Right. If you we should get in touch with them. Hey guys, so what do you think about redoing this whole thing?
Yeah. What do you think about making a shirt where every person is a sticker that you could peel off and then peel back on if they come back?
You can replace them with You can replace them with a new head as new people arise, right in that gap before they get co-opted.
Exactly.
You can stick them on, but then you got to be able to take them off too for when they get an accusation or
or whatever.
Their children are threatened or whatever they wind up doing to these people to turn them into grotesque parodies of their former selves. But Brand, wow. And this is part of why after I go to things like the dissident dialogues, or as we call it around here, the douchebag dialogues, or I go to something like Rescue the Republic. That's why I'm so emphatic about trying to impress upon people that these people don't give a shit about you at all. Do not valorize these people. Do not valorize these people. Even if there are people among them that you might like, the only person who went up at Rescue the Republic and said a word about Gaza was Jimmy. And honestly, that's not a slam on the audience because I made the point. The audience laughed when Jimmy made those jokes. But it's not that the audience shares these biases, but the people up there getting rich off that audience, they don't give a shit about that audience. And that's why not one of them will say a word about Gaza. And that's why they would let an obvious con artist like Russell Brand in their midst. Jordan Peterson, if you've watched the show for a long time, back in the day, I thought he had some valid points to make. I didn't agree with everything he said. I thought he was too extreme on his views about the rights of the young to political voice and political participation. The impression I got from him was that he didn't really think people should vote before they're 25. I didn't agree with him on that. But at the same time, I thought he was unfairly attacked for pointing out studies about women and occupations they choose in countries that have very policies that are very supportive of their careers. And he would get attacked for simply citing studies, and I would defend him at those times. This has happened with a lot of people. That happened with Peterson. It happened with Tulsi, I think. Once they get canceled by the left, unless they want to go get a real job, they got to go to the right. If they want to keep making a living this way, where else are they going to go? Now, Brand, as illustrated with the egg picture, I think has such skeletons up that ass that he was like, well, my only play is to run to Jesus. And as things come out, I'll say I was a sinner and now I'm redeemed. And that's my only play here.
Yeah, you lean harder into Jesus.
Yep.
Yeah.
Yes, that was my sinful past. Thank Jesus, he has shown me the way. And yeah, man, that's his play to keep making a living in front of a camera.
But how do the Christians feel about the magic amulets? Is that like a pagan thing, you think? Do they think that's like witchcraft, a magic amulet? I mean, if you wear a crucifix, that's supposed to protect you just fine, right? What do you need a magic amulet for? When you can get, Jesus can protect you against the Wi-Fi or the squiggly lines. Jesus can turn those.
Yeah,
he
what
can
do you
straighten
need the
out
amulet
those
for?
squiggly lines. Right. What do you need the amulet? It strikes me as something that might offend the hardcore Christians.
As we know, though, America, this isn't new to the internet age, but there's a particularly weird mutant strain of this tendency in American culture going way back to create bizarre amalgams of commercialism and Christianity and manifest destiny, where all these things just kind of get melted together. There is definitely a certain subculture on the internet that where the Kamala Harris's Venn diagram, there is a certain overlap between people who would buy this shit and people who go to church on Sunday. That is an audience, and that's who he's pitching this to.
Indeed. All right, Viggy1121, off topic. I'm writing in Jose Vega for Ruckus Maker in Chief. There you go, Viggy1121. Thank you very much for that. Eggman and the Diddler musical movie coming soon. Thank you. Appreciate that very much. Eggman and the Diddler. All right, what do we got here? We got Kevin Dorr over on YouTube. This is all bullshit. They just found $500 million to send to Ukraine. Yes, Congress could come back, but Biden could find the money. They all hate us. That is true. Kevin Dorr also says, Trump on PBD YouTube right now. He's really working alternate media. in the last 90 days. That's true. He is going on a lot of podcasts lately. Last days of big media influence. He should go on the Jimmy Dore or the Do Dissident show. Yeah. Yeah.
Who?
Trump. Yeah. Trump has been going on.
Well, yeah, I mean, we reached out to his people. We haven't heard back yet.
Yeah, we haven't heard back yet. Why is he dodging us? But yeah, no, he is. It's true. He is going on a lot of podcasts lately. Yeah, I mean, I think he's trying to drive up the young male vote, which we're going to get to later. Henry DeShazo, thanks for the $5. Good morning, gents. I'm sliding with Russell on this. Proselytizing is a huge dopamine rush for brand. Y'all get my t-shirt email. Yes. By the way, folks, send us those t-shirt emails. If you are a patron or a Locals member at the $15 a month or higher tier, we'll send you a t-shirt. We just brought our new merch store online, and so we will be sending those t-shirts out this week. I'm going to put the orders in tomorrow, so you should have them by next week, I would imagine. I don't know what the shipping time is, but I think it's probably standard 3 to 4 days, so you should have them by mid to end of week next week. So thank you, Henry. We do have that. Alrighty. Let's take a quick game break here, folks. As you know, we are trying to build a dissident community here, and so we have quite a few of you reached out to us with books, podcasts, small businesses, passion projects to sponsor through our show. So if you have a project like that, you can go to dodissidents.com/sponsors and fill out the contact form, and we can work out an arrangement to advertise your project, whatever it may be, within the bounds of the law, on this very program. And one of our friends who has done this is a guy named Stephen Cole. He has a book and a podcast called Full Crazy Town. And so this is something that we've read before, featured before, and he sold a few copies off this. So thank you guys for supporting Stephen. Tired of the endless bickering surrounding the blue-red, left-right, liberal versus conservative, not-so-merry-go-round? Do you want to get away from the emotional, angry, and oftentimes hurtful tirades that accompany those arguments? Full Crazy Town contains dozens of well-researched, accurate talking points that'll help you keep your cool as you try adding context to the hot-button issues of the day. Rational, in-depth discussions are always better than one-liners and simple slogans. So you could check out Full Crazy Town. Where is it? Where's the website? There it is. Sorry, Stephen. FullCrazyTown.com. There's a podcast and a book. Check it out. Hit that website up. Stephen was very happy. He was able to get some action off of this the first time around, and the feedback has been very positive. As you can see there, the tie-dye logo, a very sort of zen-minded political book, How to Keep Your Cool with Your Relatives. This really comes in handy for Thanksgiving. This comes in handy for Thanksgiving. If you're going to go and argue with your lib relatives on Thanksgiving, you may want to pick up a copy of this to find out how to argue without causing a fight, without starting a
great
fight,
stocking
without burning
stuffer.
bridges. And it makes a great stocking stuffer. So FullCrazyTown.com. There you go. Alrighty, folks. We will move right along here. We got Eric Husseau. Next, Brand evolves into a prosperity gospel minister fleecing everyone to fund his private jet so he can travel the world to witness plus push his sleeper movie Orb Amulet. Thank you, Eric Husseau.
No grift like the religion grift. That's what L. Ron Hubbard said. You know, you make real money, start a religion.
That's exactly
right. Look, that
right.
crazy bastard did it.
Of
it's
course.
very tempting because if you look at some of these cult leaders, you're forced to say, as we did the first time we saw the Vanguard, well, if he could do it, I could do it.
Right.
Right.
Exactly.
You see a guy like the Heaven's Gate founder, and you say, Jesus, people cut their balls off and committed self-deleted for this guy?
Right.
That guy? Where do I sign up? My bathroom needs cleaning. Where do I get some cult members?
Yeah, right. Yeah, exactly. Judy Denmark, thanks for the $10. Tips are definitely taxable here in Denmark. Every time I send a rant, I have to pay 25% VAT, which sucks. By the way, already voted via absentee ballot. Go Jill Stein. Thank you, Judy. Well, speaking of Jill Stein, folks, those of you who follow us on Twitter and those who follow us on YouTube may have seen we are premiering our full-length interview with Green Party presidential candidate Jill Stein tonight at 8 p.m. Eastern right here on this very channel. And so we do have a premiere for you later this evening. We were able to get about 45 minutes with Jill yesterday morning, and we are going to play some of that interview for you as a little preview right now, and then we will come back and talk about this piece as well as some brief thoughts on the interview, and then make sure, obviously, you tune in tonight at 8 p.m. Eastern on YouTube and Rumble. Sign up to our newsletter, folks, our Substack. We're going to obviously plug all our membership later on in the show. But if you sign up to our newsletter on Substack for free, you could sign up as a free subscriber. If you can pitch in $5 a month, it helps tremendously. But if not, it still helps tremendously to have you on our newsletter, because we will be sending out a newsletter with a link to view this interview later tonight. So once you're signed up at dudissidence.substack.com, you get all the updates when and where we're going live or premiering a new video. So the full interview with Jill Stein is a little under an hour. This piece here is a little over 6 minutes, just a little preview, a little taste of what's to come this evening. In this section, Russ asks her about her recent dust-up with Mehdi Hasan. So we will full screen this, mute up, let this play. We'll see you back here in about 6 minutes.
So you mentioned Mehdi Hasan. So you recently had a dust-up with him. Part of it, this was kind of the end of it, we can win if the anti-war majority vote for an anti-war candidate. If you think it's the media's job to prevent that from happening, just be honest about that. While we're being honest, can you explain how voting for a candidate who's committing genocide will stop the genocide? Now, he responded to you, I'll answer your question when you answer mine. For the third time, how does voting for you at 2% in the polls with your own proxies admitting you can't win stop the genocide? Walk me through how the genocide stops when someone votes for you in the polling booth in November. So what would your response to that be?
I'm sorry, Mehdi Hasan, if you don't understand how grassroots politics works. Listen to Frederick Douglass, who said, power concedes nothing without a demand. Never has, never will. We're not making that demand. You can be sure that the ceasefire and the end of the genocide is not going to happen. Okay? So as a baseline, we have to be heard demanding that it stop and that there be consequences for committing that genocide. That is where grassroots democracy begins. And if you don't begin there, forget the rest. I don't think Mehdi Hasan exactly understands grassroots politics. You know, he's been a talking head for the DNC on MSNBC, and I think that's kind of the extent of his political understanding. I've tried explaining this to him, you know, on his show, where he just promptly cut me off. He's not really capable of having, yeah, that's what he does. He is not a journalist. He is really a talking head and an attack dog for the DNC. Still, in spite of having been fired by their mouthpiece, I think he continues to audition for another job in that capacity. It's unfortunate. And I think he's really getting his just desserts from his constituency, because once the whole interview went up, not just the clips that he wanted to share, once the whole interview went up, which went up quite quietly, and people began to discover it, he's being absolutely raked over the coals, and many people are resigning, you know, from his subscription, you know, which they had, you know, supported in good faith. But he has absolutely proven that he does not deserve support. He is not a good faith journalist. He is an attack dog, like, you know, so many that he criticizes.
Well, this is what's really frustrating about him. And, you know, Russ mentioned some other, you know, progressive sort of podcaster types in this space. You know, when you have a space of people who now all of a sudden are prioritizing the Palestinian people for the first time ever, because part of how this got to this place is because this issue has been so overlooked for so long. And to me, it's just offensive to see, okay, after a year of genocide where you finally take a step outside of the duopoly, okay, we are going to organize for something better. As Russ said earlier, Tim Walz comes around with his free marijuana and his free school lunch. Oh, we'll take that. And then they come at you with, well, Trump will be worse. What's life under Trump? What's life under Netanyahu for the people in Gaza right now? If they can live under Benjamin Netanyahu, you can live under Trump. Right? I mean, that's the way I feel about it. Like the reversion to lesser evilism in this context doesn't even hold.
It really doesn't. I mean, because who's more at risk? Whether it's Harris or Trump, it's Muslim Americans, who are most at risk here. When people talk about the consequences of Trump, and all the, all the fears that are circulating about him right now, which he's certainly trying to amp up, those all converge on Muslim Americans. And it's them who's saying, that we've got to stand up here and, preserve human rights, because what happens in Gaza doesn't stay in Gaza. This is about, the systematic torture and murder of children on an industrial scale. This is about the destruction of human rights and the destruction of international law. We ourselves are at peril here right now because we are not going to be top dog forever. In fact, we're not top dog right now. And China and, the global South is more powerful financially. And, you put China and Russia together, they got more nukes than we do, for one thing. So we don't want to be nuking this out with each other. We need to be elevating international law right now and diplomacy as a means of settling our disputes. And we're in the process right now of dismantling that whole body of international law. So even if your interest is strictly confined to our own self-interest as Americans, this is unbelievably dangerous. But, for those who are kind of doing a 180 here, and who are not standing up with the courage of their convictions, I don't want to be too critical at the moment, because I think there is a significant chance that there are going to be developments that will flip them back. And, I think it's really important to have honest dialogue about this. And all the reasons that prompted those initial endorsements have not gone away. And, I think it's really important for people to just continue that dialogue and for us to keep the heat on about why people just absolutely cannot endorse this genocide.
All right, folks. So that is a sampling of our interview with Dr. Jill Stein, which premieres in full later tonight. We had about 45 minutes. This is the home stretch of campaign season for her. She's been obviously and continues to be extremely busy. She made some time for us in the morning before she caught a flight to Chicago, where she had an event last night. So given the time constraints and the context in which the interview took place 3 weeks before an election about a genocide that's happening right now, the interview was pretty narrowly focused on Israel-Palestine and Muslim and Arab voters and the sort of panic that the campaign is causing in and around the DNC. That is basically the ground that we covered, given the time we had and the context in which the interview took place. I would love to talk to her more about lots of other things, but that was pretty much the focus of this. It ended up running just under an hour because we asked our last question right at the 45-minute mark, thinking it was going to be a nice, fun way to end, and she ended up monologuing a bit.
Yes. Anybody who saw my interview with her in Chicago, I brought up the fact that her candidacy was a plot point in American Horror Story Cult. So I showed her clips of American Horror Story Cult where they're part of the horror is having voted for Jill Stein. So that was a fun thing to play for Jill Stein, and something that I am quite sure no other interviewers would ever do. So that was fun.
Yeah. And we hope you can tune in. Like I said, there's stuff I would have liked to get into that we didn't get into. There's stuff I would have liked to gotten into a little deeper than we got into it. But I think, for an interview that lasted a little under an hour, we did cover a lot of good ground. And I think it's well worth the watch. So we hope you guys could tune into that. That's going to be tonight at 8 p.m. Eastern on YouTube and Rumble. We will premiere those in full. Any more notes on that interview, or should we just let that speak for itself and move on? What do you? Any overall takes?
Yeah, no, that was very good of her to make the time. We did get into some interesting stuff, particularly around what Shama and the gentleman, I forget his name, from Abandoned Harris,
Hassan
been saying
Abdel-Salam.
about costing Harris, Michigan. We asked her about that, so you'll see her answer. We're going to hold you in suspense until the premiere tonight. And really, all kidding aside, check out American Horror Story Cult. I thought that was the best season ever of the show for politics junkies.
There you go.
Because actually, this was surprising because that creative team is firmly ensconced in Hollywood. It may have been the best satire of the liberal class to be done in this entire era. And that's quite an endorsement, I know. But the whole Jill Stein thing, they're making fun of the liberals freaking out about Jill Stein. Like, it's really parodying those types of liberals. Like, yeah, you have Sarah Paulson crying, "What about Merrick Garland?
Yeah.
What's going to happen?" Like that. It's pretty funny.
Yeah.
I would recommend it if you haven't seen it.
Yeah, and we didn't show all of those things in the cut for copyright reasons, but yeah, you'll get a brief sense of it anyway. All right, folks. So yeah, that is coming up tonight. We hope you can all tune in to our Jill Stein interview. A lot of you guys have been asking us to do that for a while, and we're happy to finally come through at quite the time. I mean, we did this interview. We mentioned this too right after the DNC ran their first ever attack ad against a third-party candidate. She's obviously on their radar. I would say probably even more than 2016. 2016, the outrage about Jill Stein didn't really come until after the election because they were so confident they were going to win. Yeah, right. They were so confident that Hillary was going to win that they didn't really make us think about Jill Stein until after the election. This is probably as panicked as they've been about her heading in to November, and
like ever.
Yeah. So,
I have not seen a Green Party candidate get this amount of smoke from the establishment since Ralph Nader.
Yes, that is, I think, accurate. All right. Brand's magic amulet is to lure the incel Dungeons and Dragons crowd. Can't wait for the magic dice for Christ to come out. Thank you. Eric Rousseau, the magic amulet is a weak grift. Now the Mormons with their magic underwear. That's original. Thank you, Eric Rousseau. Appreciate that.
Well, this is what I mean by this isn't new. America has a long history of being kind of an incubator lab for crackpot mutations that fuse all of these strains in our culture together, the capitalism and the genocidal tendencies, God and guns and all those things, and the prosperity gospel. This is just a very weird, very online manifestation of that American tendency.
Yeah, agreed. Tony B, thanks for the $20. 10 for RD's Brill Cream and 10 for Keaton's Hair Defense Fund. Thank you, Tony B. Kuzetsky Bassane, thanks for the $9.99 super sticker. Appreciate that very, very much. Mike, thanks for the $20. That's very generous of you. Morning, DDs. Off to work. Was thinking that Kamala marrying her APAC handler was probably a long game psyop to position them deeper and closer to power. A conspiracy theory to ponder. Perhaps, although I think, I don't know. When did she marry him? It's just, the thing that's so scary about her is that she really is, as we'll see later on in the show, because we're going to show a little bit of her interview with Bret Baier. Like Joe Biden, without a brain, she just strikes me as someone who would just do anything that Jake Sullivan tells her to do.
Yes.
Without question. Like there's no human element. Is this the right thing to do or not? But we will get to that.
Yeah, I have a forthcoming article / shit post about this, about Kamala as Avatar, and about how she is the ultimate apotheosis of what the deep state has been working towards since at least Kennedy.
Right. All right, folks. So victories are few and far between these days, but Chalk 1 point for the good guys, for the good team. Columbia bars vocal pro-Israel professor from campus. The university said Shai Davidai has repeatedly harassed and intimidated employees. He said that the university has not done enough to crack down on pro-Palestinian protests. No, sending in 3,000 cops to break up an encampment. No, that wasn't enough. That wasn't enough, apparently. Not for Shai. Columbia University has temporarily barred a vocal pro-Israel professor from campus, saying he repeatedly harassed and intimidated the school's employees. Shai Davidai, an assistant professor in the business school, has been a polarizing presence on campus since October 7, 2023, when Hamas led an attack on Israel that has turned Gaza into a battlefield. Their editorial there. He has accused Columbia of not doing enough to crack down on pro-Palestinian protests. Gaza's been a battlefield for 75 years, which he says are broadly anti-Semitic and support terrorism. He often makes videos of student activists and administrators and posts them online. Actions his critics say blow past the boundaries of civility and policy. His critics say that. His critics, including leadership of the university now, thankfully. In recent days, Professor Davidai has used his X account, which has more than 100,000 followers, to accuse several student groups of supporting terrorism, posting the name and email address of a Columbia professor he suggests was okay with those four words there. I don't know if we should say them or not, and falsely called Rashid Khalidi, a respected Palestinian scholar at Columbia who is retiring, a spokesperson for Hamas. Wow. Last week, on the one-year anniversary of the Hamas attack on Israel, Professor Davidai posted videos of himself following around Cass Holloway, the university's chief operating officer, for several minutes with a camera and peppering him with questions about why pro-Palestinian protests were allowed on campus that day. This was part of an unbelievably long Twitter thread that he posted on the anniversary. So we have a couple of videos from here. This is the one. This one is the one that the Times actually linked to in that article. This is quite something. And then there's one more that I'll show you a piece of. But here is Shai Davidai confronting Cass Holloway, Columbia COO, on the anniversary of October 7th amidst the student protests.
Of Columbia allowing this on October 7th. Cass, what do you have to say?
Excuse me, guy.
I'm standing here. I'm walking with you. This is how they walk with me. I'm walking with you. What do you have to say? How did you allow this to happen on October 7th?
I'm sorry, Shai. Please excuse me.
I'm excusing. I'm walking with you. I'm not obstructing. Your public safety officer said that this is not obstruction. So I'm walking with you. Are you stopping this? Cass, you didn't do anything when they did Occupy Wall Street for the mayor. Remember that? Now it's your time to actually redeem yourself. You have to do your job. And I will not let you rest if they won't let us rest. You have Israeli students crying. And you are not here. Moria, come here. I want you to meet an Israeli student.
This is amazing.
An Israeli student. She just started this year. She's a tuition-paying student. She just started this year.
I'm studying neuroscience here. All I want, I'm an Israeli. I just moved here from Israel. All I want is to mourn on October 7th. That's all I wanted.
So go mourn. Who's stopping you from mourning?
Who's stopping you?
You want to mourn? Go mourn.
You don't like the protests? Don't go by the protests.
Yeah, go inside and mourn. Go somewhere else and mourn.
Go away from the protests.
Go to the library and mourn. You got a whole campus, got a whole city.
They can hear it. Well, there's McWhorter in his editorial about the horrors of not being able to teach John Cage because of the protests.
That's right.
The horror. They can hear it from the classrooms. Well, this is freedom of speech, sunshine.
Yes,
which I will point out. Many of the Zion Nazis, like Barry Weiss, claim to be ardent champions of until they don't like the speech. That's the thing. All these people who said they were pro-speech, they were pro being able to use whatever pronouns they want. They were not actually pro-speech, as they've demonstrated.
Exactly. I love that. All I want is to mourn. Nobody's stopping you from mourning.
This bothers you? Okay, welcome to America. These are the same people who will talk to you about China and North Korea, how terrible it is that people can't speak. How do you think freedom of speech works? It's only speech you agree with? Right. That's freedom of speech to you? That is what freedom of speech is to them.
To them, absolutely.
Palestinian friends, we're people of peace. How can we have peace and how can we go to a university that doesn't support us in mourning the one day? It's like the Holocaust. What do you expect us to do? Tell me. Just tell me.
I'm very, very sorry.
Don't say sorry if you let this happen. This is your responsibility.
I like how she says mourning the one day. It's like the Holocaust. That's why the people are protesting here. Because October 7th was one day. And yeah, to the extent that there were war crimes committed that day, that's being investigated now by the ICC. But every day has been another war crime, has been another Holocaust in Gaza since that day. So she says, this is the one day. This is the one day to mourn. Hey, got news for you. Every day since then and most days before then have been a day of mourning for the people in Gaza.
I have got to say, from what little interaction I have with them, and as I've mentioned, I have some crazed Zionists on my social media that I never confront because I don't want to lose the listening post. I want to see what they say amongst themselves. But every now and then I'll get challenged by one of them, and I ignore it because they're very hypersensitive. If you go at them, I'll lose the post. But they live in their own universe. Like I'm kind of curious. I kind of do want to ask them where they get their news from, because they think that Israel has offered multiple good faith peace offers that Hamas continuously rejects. The fact that the U.S. itself, no stauncher ally of Israel than the U.S., has complained that Netanyahu keeps sabotaging all the peace efforts because he clearly doesn't want to end it. They don't seem to know about that. I am very curious, where do they get this shit from? Because they're getting it from somewhere, because they all have the same exact narratives.
Well, this is why on that score I said, when we've covered this, I've said the American Zionists are even more brainwashed in a sense than the Israelis, because even the Israelis are out protesting Netanyahu. Even the Israelis see that Netanyahu is the biggest obstacle to peace, that he is sabotaging these hostage deals. That's the mainstream opinion amongst Israeli Zionists. So why do Americans not understand that?
I had one of them say, how many peace deals has Hamas rejected now? 7, 8? I'm losing track. And they all have this narrative. So there's a source. There's some place they're getting these specific details from. I'm going to have to ask one of them, like just very mildly. Like, can I just ask where your news comes from?
This is not being sorry. Speak with the student, not me.
I am sorry, and if you feel that you have been harassed in any way, please file a complaint.
No, I'm filing a complaint with you right now, Cass. You're the COO.
Okay.
All right, I'm filing a complaint about this. All of this. This, it's unsanctioned. They violated every time, place, time, manner. They are hiding their faces.
Unbelievable.
He doesn't care about his daughter.
So what Cass Holloway says there is, hey, if you've been harassed here, file a complaint, tell us what happened, we'll look into it. The fact that there's a protest happening and that is, for some weird reason, interfering with your ability to mourn, that's not harassment. That's not outside the bounds. Like, this is obviously allowed. You're free to go into your own space and do whatever you want. But there's a campus on protest, which, yes, it is allowed. It's not unsanctioned. I mean, it's just ridiculous.
I heard you, and I have to go.
Okay, go. But I'm walking with you. Where are we going, Cass? Because the Jewish and Israeli students don't get to go. So where are we going?
Guy.
Where are we going?
He's moving.
I'm walking with you. I'm not obstructing you. Where are we going?
I am going.
All right, so that's one. Then this is the second one. We're not going to play the whole thing, this one, but this one, I think like the first minute or so is worth showing you here too.
About you, I've written about how I can see that you're a good guy, that inside your heart you know I'm right. I know that we can grab a beer or two together and be friends, but you are indifferent.
Yeah, that's
and
what he's going to do.
Hatred happens when people like you are indifferent. You are the chief operating officer of Colombia. Do you realize that? Do you realize that this is because of you? This is not despite of you. This is because of you. You do realize this. And look, like I told you, I am not going to let you rest until they let us rest. And they are not letting us rest in peace.
Why are they not? What? What do you mean they're not letting you rest? What are they doing? How are they controlling you? There's a protest on campus. They're not letting us rest? Who's in your face right now? Who? You're walking around because you want to, get in the face of the COO saying, I'm not going to let you rest because they won't let us rest. I mean, just comical.
Well, this is something that the Zionists can pull that South Africa was never able to. The white South Africans didn't have the Holocaust to hide behind.
Right.
They didn't have any basis to claim victimhood for themselves. So they never played it this way. How could they? They had all they could do was claim that it was separate but equal, and which of course didn't work very well. But this grievance, this combination of committing a genocide while claiming to be the victim, this is unique to Zionists.
Yep.
Do you understand? If I turn off the camera, will you talk seriously? Or are you just gonna be completely? Do you think this will go away if this Shai Davidai goes away? Is that what you're thinking?
No. Do you still have a job there?
No.
So why are you not doing anything? We were at that meeting where you had a hard time saying that Hamas is a terrorist organization.
Stop recording.
Okay. What's funny is that you people believe that you're right. You really believe that you're right. You believe that what you are doing is keeping the public safety. I told you here months ago. Remember when you couldn't say that Hamas is a terrorist organization? I have that on tape. You remember when you couldn't say that the PFLP is a terrorist organization? I have that on tape.
All right, that's enough. He just keeps going and going and going. Mm-hmm. So yeah, they finally shit canned him. I mean, that's a way to get. Well, they didn't fire him. Actually, that's wrong. They suspended him. It's only temporary. So the school said it notified Professor Davidai of his decision on Tuesday. Professor Davidai, an Israeli citizen, declined an interview request. Oh, really? He didn't want to run his mouth to the New York Times. He seems to want to run his mouth on camera every chance he gets. He's very, very prolific social media poster. But the New York Times asked to interview him, and he says, "No, that's weird. That
is weird."
Yeah. You'd think a guy like that.
I mean, really, it is weird.
Yeah, why?
He seems to want a lot of attention.
But posted an expletive-laden video on social media on Tuesday night in which he suggested he would sue the university for its decision and that he was not going anywhere. Here's a piece of that.
Holloway thinks that if he pushes Cass Holloway thinks that if he pushes Shai away, his problems are over. Cass, this message is for you. I'm not going anywhere. And you can go fuck yourself until we meet at court.
There you go. Not backing down, except won't interview with the Times.
Yeah.
In a statement on Tuesday night, the university said it respected Professor Davidai's right to speech and was not limiting it. It said that Professor Davidai had repeatedly harassed and intimidated university employees in violation of university policy and that it would temporarily limit his access to campus. The statement did not specify precisely what behavior led to the decision, but university officials said Professor Davidai's behavior towards employees on the anniversary of the attack was the cause. That's what we just showed you. I mean, following the COO around with a camera, stalking him with a camera in such a prolonged manner. Yeah, I mean, that is one way to do it. And, the article goes on.
Well, that is harassment.
It is. And the article goes on to mention how, this decision to suspend him represents a sort of difficulty that campuses are now having to navigate after a year of protests where, they have to balance the speech rights of everybody, obviously. But to the extent that they're going to crack down on examples that may push the boundaries of what is considered, not just free speech, but in this case, he's going up to one of his fellow coworkers and putting a camera in their face, when they don't want to be filmed, that might be a violation of some sort of, work code. I don't know. I'm not an HR person, but the point is they're starting to enforce these policies in both directions now. Whereas a year ago, a guy like this would have free reign to just act however he wants, But now that students have stood up, students have forced campuses to be more even-handed. So now it's not just, free reign. These Zionists don't just have free reign to do whatever they want anymore. Whereas they used to, as recently as those UCLA encampments, where when the violent Zionists showed up and started throwing those firecrackers or whatever the fuck they were into the ceasefire protesters' tents. Now you're starting to see a little bit of a balancing out.
In many ways, they broke the protest movement. You're not seeing these massive protests now because they instituted security measures. And in places like NYU, they created standards that are absolutely disgusting, directly conflating Zionism with anti-Semitism, so that if you say Zionism, you could get expelled. You're not even allowed to use the term. So they're not as threatened now. So they can afford to start to loosen up a little bit. They're not feeling under quite as much pressure because a lot of the measures they took to suppress these protests worked. Yeah, there was a protest there on campus, not anything like the size and scale of what we were seeing last semester, and that was their intention. Also, this guy is uniquely obnoxious.
Yes.
You're not seeing a lot of cases where Zionists are dumb enough to go mess with the principal administrators in that way, in a way that could legally be construed as harassment. But it's not like you're seeing this at campuses all over the country. They're going after the Zionists. The enforcement is still selective.
Well, I mean, look, I think you also have to be, if you're a campus, you have to uphold standards of speech on campus. Like the girl walking around with the Israeli flag, obviously, you have to respect those speech rights as much as the ceasefire protesters. Now, does she have a right to say, shut this protest down because I have to mourn? Of course not. And that's why the COO, he walked right past her.
Well, she walked right past her.
And if you're going to follow me around with a camera and stick it at my face and just like time after time after time, that was 2 videos, multiple cuts. He said, can you please stop filming? So he stopped filming. And then it cuts to when he starts filming one more time. So this guy got what he had coming to him. It's a temporary suspension. Like I said, they have not, at this recording at least, fired him. We don't know what will come of this. He says, I'll see you in court. He's going to try and fight this. I don't know exactly what he's going to sue them for. It's not really clear. This guy put all the evidence on tape and posted it to his own social media, so I don't really know what argument he will try to make, but he will try to make something. But good to see him get suspended, at least for what is obviously not simply political speech. Right. Yeah. Especially when you're targeting your coworkers in that way. Like they have a legitimate beef if one of their colleagues is going around doing that to them.
Well, and literally doxing his colleagues.
And yes, publishing, the email and all that. Yep. Absolutely. All right. What do we got here? Hillary Hinton, Brand's amulet gives him a -4 armor class and a +4 on saving throws against anal penetration. Thank you, Hillary Hinton. Appreciate that very much.
Best audience.
Eric Maines, thanks for the $20 over on YouTube. Appreciate that very much. 60 Minutes recently reported how insurers doctored claim reports in Florida to deny payments. Shades of 2008. Wall Street forgery stole homes on botched securitized loans. If disaster doesn't get to your home, Wall Street will, one altered doc at a time. Thank you, Eric Maines. Appreciate that. Sparky, thanks for the $10. There was a book vaguely similar in concept to Crazy Town called We're Right, They're Wrong by friend of the show, James Carville. It was very useful to Democrat voters at Thanksgiving back then. You know what I wanted to do? I forgot to do this, but this would have been funny. So I wanted to pitch Jill Stein at the end as kind of a joke. You know how they have that service, it's called Cameo, where like celebrities will wish your friend, like you could pay John Stamos $50 to wish your friend a happy birthday. I wanted to pitch Jill Stein. I said, you should go on Cameo and for $50 or whatever, offer to wish someone's liberal friends a happy Thanksgiving. Could you imagine if you text your lib uncle a happy Thanksgiving message from Jill Stein?
You know
I
what?
wanted to picture that.
You know what? That would be the greatest fundraising idea in the history of the Green Party.
Yeah, that's
do you know how much money they would make off that?
That's true.
Do you know how many people would do that?
Fundraiser.
So many people would line up to do that. There wouldn't be enough hours in the day for her to fulfill all the requests. I would do that.
Yeah, of course. Who wouldn't do that? You wouldn't. Hi, Jill Stein here. Your friend Russell just wanted me to wish you a happy Thanksgiving. Yeah, send it out on Thanksgiving Day.
Especially if Harris loses, the demand will triple.
That's what I'm saying. I meant to bring that up, and it just slipped my mind. I had it planned and everything. Alrighty. Let's see here. Kuznetsky Bassane, thanks for the $4.99, says, go Jill Stein. Great effing interview. F the evil empire. Take back the reins. Thank you, Kuznetsky Bassane.
Thank you.
Trogdor77 says, the pro-Palestinian protesters are mourning as well. Absolutely. Kuznetsky Bassane, thanks for the $4.99 again. Yeah, this is probably right, actually. Actually, I'm going to give you a hard on this because I think you're correct. Davidai's lawyer must have advised him to shut up. That's probably why he didn't do the interview at the Times.
That makes
probably
sense.
His lawyer was
that
like,
makes sense.
You know what? You're going to let me speak for you from now on, you fucking idiot. That makes sense. Okay. Nocturnal Human. All right, I'm going to read these, so I'm going to go slightly out of order since these are connected. So Sabi interviewed Dr. Shiva. She kicked him off when he was being an asshole. It was great. Did she end up kicking him off? I didn't see the interview. I saw the clip of it.
I saw a clip, which was just shocking.
Mad Wolf, did you guys see the interview with Sabi and Dr. Shiva? What are your thoughts on Shiva? Well, I tweeted about this, and what I saw was, and this is what this guy does. This is why we have not had him on. This is why very few people have him on. What he did with the Sabi interview is he did the interview, and then he goes back and he makes a video about the interview where he's offering running commentary about the interview, where he's obviously exposes himself as the belligerent piece of shit that he is. And so that's my thoughts on Dr. Shiva, a belligerent, nasty piece of garbage. And good for her for kicking him off the show. I'd have never had him on the show if I were her. He's just an asshole. He's just a vile person. You know what he did when our friend Misty Winston had him on her radio show, TNT Radio? You know, they do a live radio broadcast, internet radio, broadcast worldwide. And he was on her radio show live. And, what they do on that show is the way they fund the show is through ad breaks. We both did that show when she hosted it. You do maybe 3 or 4 ad breaks per hour for 2 minutes each. And that's how they pay for the show, right? That's the name of the game. So this guy, while he's on with her, he apparently jacks the feed, broadcasts the radio interview to Twitter, and then during the ad breaks starts monologuing to his audience on Twitter. So like to basically take audience from them onto his Twitter feed. Right. And then he goes and he calls people, you're a pussy. Glenn Greenwald and Jimmy Dore, you're a pussy for not having me on. Well, you think people are going to have you on their show if you come at them that way? Right. Listen, we know who everybody is. The people who if we find you worthwhile, we'll call you. We'll call you. Right. And look, there are go-getters out there who submit themselves for interviews. We've gotten a few of them. And, that's fine. You send a letter of interest, whatever. It's unlikely to result in an invitation. Like I said, we know who the people are who we want on the show. We'll get in touch with you if we want you. That's the way most of these shows work. But you come at people like that, and then you want to have them on the show. So Sabi brings you on her show of over 100,000 subscribers. You act in such an obnoxious way on the show, and then you call her things that I won't even repeat on here. I wouldn't even if I could. No, he's just a piece of garbage. So please, and I tweeted this, to those who keep it, and there not many of you do this anymore, but we used to have about a dozen or so. Interview Dr. Shiva. Fuck no, fuck him. Get out of here. The guy's a fucking joke, and just a really, really vile person. So this. That's my answer to that. All right.
Yes.
Anyway.
DD was right. Hashtag.
DD was right all along. Sunrise, Jordanian court sentences journalist to 1 year in prison and fines over $7,000 for report on Jordan-Israel ties. Thank you for that. Appreciate that. The only time we've heard Kamala speaking coherently was when she regales us of her exercise regimen. That's right, 45 minutes. They bring the
her love of Venn
hotel.
diagrams.
That's right, that too. Alrighty, what do we got here? Mark P. Thicko, thank you. Where does self-defense end? If a guy hits me in my face, how many of his friends, relatives, and neighbors can I neutralize, torture, and so on, and how long? I don't get how the Zios still have this entitlement. Well, of course. I mean, to look at that and call it self-defense is just
well. And then if you got punched in the face because you stole the guy's house,
right? Yeah. All righty. No, but he's talking about the Israeli argument of self-defense.
No, I know.
Yeah.
But I'm saying the punch in the face only came because you stole the guy's house in the first place.
Right. All righty. Let's move on here. Another Israel-Palestine story. Russell, you're going to do this one, correct? Here we go.
Yep. Okay, so you've heard a lot, and I heard this my whole life. This is what I keep saying. As soon as October 7th happened, because I don't have a lot of interaction with the Jewish community since my childhood, since they kicked me out of Hebrew school when I was 9. So many of these things are the same exact things I remember from my childhood, them saying how they use their own people as human shields. But back then it was the PLO that they were attributing that to. So now it's Hamas, but it's the same arguments. But apparently, actually, the IDF uses Palestinians as human shields, according to a pretty credible report. After Israeli soldiers found Mohammed Shubir hiding with his family in early March, they detained him for roughly 10 days before releasing him without charge, he said. During that time, Mr. Shubir said, the soldiers used him as a human shield. Mr. Shubir, then 17, said he was forced to walk handcuffed through the empty ruins of his hometown, Khan Yunis, in southern Gaza, searching for explosives set by Hamas. To avoid being blown up themselves, the soldiers made him go ahead, Mr. Shubir said. In one wrecked building, he stopped in his tracks. Running along the wall, he said, was a series of wires attached to explosives. The soldiers sent me like a dog to a booby-trapped apartment, said Mr. Shubir, a high school student. I thought these would be the last moments of my life. High school student. An investigation by the New York Times found that Israeli soldiers and intelligence agents throughout the war in Gaza have regularly forced captured Palestinians like Mr. Shubir to contact life-threatening reconnaissance missions to avoid putting Israeli soldiers at risk on the battlefield. While the extent and scale of such operations are unknown, the practice, illegal under both Israeli and international law, has been used by at least 11 squads in 5 cities in Gaza, often with the involvement of officers from Israeli intelligence agencies. Palestinian detainees have been coerced to explore places in Gaza where the Israeli military believes that Hamas militants have prepared an ambush or a booby trap. The practice has gradually become more widespread since the start of the war last October. Detainees have been forced to scout and film inside tunnel networks where soldiers believed fighters were still hiding. They have entered buildings rigged with mines to find hidden explosives. They have been told to pick up or move objects like generators and water tanks that Israeli soldiers feared concealed tunnel entrances or booby traps. The Times interviewed 7 Israeli soldiers who observed or participated in the practice and presented it as routine, commonplace, and organized, conducted with considerable logistical support and the knowledge of superiors on the battlefield. Many of them said the detainees were handled and often transported between the squads by officers from Israel's intelligence agencies, a process that required coordination between battalions and the awareness of senior field commanders. And though they served in different parts of Gaza at different points in the war, the soldiers largely used the same terms to refer to human shields. The Times also spoke to 8 soldiers and officials briefed on the practice who all spoke on the condition of anonymity in order to discuss a military secret. Major General Tamir Heyman, a former chief of military intelligence who is routinely briefed by top military and defense officials on the conduct of the war, confirmed the use of one version of the practice, saying that some detainees had been coerced into entering tunnels, while others had volunteered to accompany troops and act as their guides in the hope of gaining favor with the military. And 3 Palestinians gave on-the-record accounts about being used as human shields. The Times found no evidence of any detainees being harmed or killed while being used as human shields. In one case, an Israeli officer was shot and killed after a detainee sent to search a building either did not detect or failed to report a militant hiding there. I'm betting the latter. The Israeli military said in a statement that its directives and guidelines strictly prohibit the use of detained Gaza civilians for military operations. It added that the accounts of the Palestinian detainees and soldiers interviewed by the Times would be examined by the relevant authorities. In 5 years, there will be a report. International law forbids the use of civilians or combatants as a shield against attack. It is also illegal to send captured combatants to places where they would be exposed to fire or to force civilians to do anything related to the conduct of military operations. While the laws are vaguer about the rights of people detained during conflicts with a non-state actor like Hamas, isn't Hamas a state actor in the sense that while it's not a state, they were the governing body? They were voted for and elected in Gaza. So I'm not clear on why they would not be a state actor, other than that it's not a state.
Right. I think it goes to the question of statehood more broadly, yeah.
But they are the government there.
Right.
It is illegal to force Palestinian detainees to explore dangerous places, regardless of whether those detainees are civilians or members of the fighting wing of Hamas, said Lawrence Hill Cathorn, a professor at the University of Bristol in England and an expert on laws governing detention in conflicts with non-state actors. The Israeli military employed a similar practice known as the neighbor procedure in Gaza and the West Bank in the early 2000s. Soldiers would force Palestinian civilians to approach the homes of militants to persuade them to surrender. That procedure was banned in 2005 by Israel's Supreme Court in an expansive ruling that also outlawed the use of human shields in other contexts. The court's president, Aaron Barak, ruled that a resident of an occupied territory should not be brought, even with his consent, into an area where a military operation is taking place. The power imbalance between soldier and civilian, his decision said, meant that no one could be considered to have volunteered for such a task. Soldiers should also not ask civilians to do things they assumed were safe, the ruling added, given that this assumption is sometimes unfounded. Okay, so our ally Israel is committing blatant war crimes in violation of international law. This, in addition to denying food, starving the population, taking no care to protect civilian lives, and by any fair interpretation, going out of their way to make life unlivable in Gaza and to eliminate as many Palestinians as they possibly can, meaning murder as many as they possibly can, while maintaining some slight pretense of plausible deniability that the U.S. can hang its hat on. And I mean very, very, very slight. Slight in the sense that, yes, they have enough bombs that they could just go in and kill everyone all at once. They're doing it slowly to maintain some kind of plausible deniability. And here, even the claim that Hamas is using their people as human shields, something that Hamas denies, well, we know for a fact now that Israel is using Palestinians as human shields.
Well, yeah, two things. So, the over the summer, before October 7th, summer of last year, what was Netanyahu being protested for primarily was trying to disempower the Supreme Court in Israel, trying to consolidate power behind the executive, i.e., him. I'll let that hang in the air because that could have very well been in preparation for the expansion of Greater Israel, where they have to take, shall we say, extra legal measures, even according to their own society. And as that judge rightly ruled, there's no such thing as consent to be dragged into a military zone, given the power imbalance between an IDF soldier and a Palestinian civilian. So, the very court that put a stop to that process, which had been in place 20 years ago, they are trying to now disempower that within Israel, meaning Netanyahu's party. And that is is a big part of what put him in such political peril to begin with. The second thing, obviously, the human shields revelation here, as reported in the New York Times, like I said, this is a mainstream outlet. This just goes to show what liars so many of these Israel supporters are, who cry crocodile tears for Palestinian civilians. Remember, there was the hostage rescue mission where 4 Israeli hostages were recovered from, I forget the town or the province. This was probably about 6 months ago. It was one of the bloodiest days of the war, where 292 civilians were killed in an operation that brought the rescue of 4 hostages. Now, keep in mind, those hostages were already offered back to Israel. There have been multiple full hostage exchange deals on the table that Netanyahu has sabotaged. And like I said, the Israeli Zionists are more convinced, rightfully, that Netanyahu is the main saboteur of these peace deals than a lot of the brainwashed Zionists here in the United States. But the reason I bring that up is that after that happened, after that rescue mission, where to get 4 hostages who were already offered back anyway, 292 civilians were killed. I remember Barry Weiss did a big monologue about how wonderful the rescue mission was. And she said, now hundreds of civilians were killed, and that's a tragedy, full stop, she said. That's a tragedy, full stop. But who did she blame for that tragedy? Of course, Hamas. For using them as human shields. Well, turns out here, in writing, well documented, the Israelis will use Palestinian civilians as human shields. Just one more revelation. They just keep coming. They just keep coming. But whenever you hear that talking point now, well, the reason why so many Palestinians are being killed, it's not because the IDF is bombing them indiscriminately from the sky. It's not that they're shooting missiles into field hospitals, which they did this last week. It's all because they are hostage to a governing body that is deliberately putting them in harm's way. Here you have it. Israel deliberately putting them in harm's way. Yep. All righty. Kenman G, getting kicked off Columbia for Zionism is like getting kicked out of Guns N' Roses for drugs and alcohol. A true feat. Thank you, Kenman G. Appreciate that very much. Good one. What do we got here? We got Eric Husso. Israelis are the worst victim bullies. Thank you very much for that, Eric Husso. To be fair, Brand was one of the few voices to support Assange. I loved Russell Brand. We used to love Russell Brand. We used to cover Russell Brand very positively, and rightfully so. No, Russell Brand, that's what's really upsetting about Russell Brand is that, it's not like, okay, Jordan Peterson jumps the shark. He was halfway there to begin with. A guy like Russell Brand used to be great. I mean, he was one of the best in this space.
He really was.
Yeah.
He really was. What did he go on and just completely destroy them? Was it Morning Joe?
Well, Morning Joe, that was a while back, but yes. But even more recently than that, like the whole dust up he had with John Heilman, about MSNBC and misinformation. Like that was relatively recent. That was like a year and a half ago or something like that. Yep. So,
this is what I think. He was an addict. He did a lot of fucked up shit with egg cartons and whatever. He got clean. He tried to live a more positive life. I think he genuinely, authentically wanted to make a better life, maybe partly to make up for what he had done during that time. And then they went after him by uncovering this, and he knew how much more there was to uncover, and he ran to this grift.
Yeah, ran for cover. Yep. Yeah, I think that's true. All right, folks, we're going to take a game break here to move some coffee. It's the morning, right? You got to drink coffee in the morning. Well, how about Rumble 1775 coffee? Do you enjoy the free speech that Rumble is protecting and fighting for? Well, our show on Rumble is only possible thanks to our viewers supporting Rumble's platform by purchasing some of their products. Now, most of you drink coffee every day, and that's why you got to try Rumble 1775 coffee. Some of the best coffee out there, and it's the same price as the coffee you buy in the stores, and you get more bang for your buck because they come in those 16-ounce bags, those hefty 1-pound bags, as opposed to the supermarket where you get the 10 or the 12-ounce bags. Rumble 1775 coffee is free from chemicals, yet rich in flavor. This is because their beans are sourced from high-altitude farms in Bolivia, handpicked, roasted weekly at their facility in Miami, and delivered fresh to your doorstep. And as believers in freedom, buying from Rumble helps fight back against censorious corporations like Starbucks and Dunkin' Donuts. Join the coffee revolution and brew rebellion with Rumble 1775 coffee. If you go to 1775coffee.com and you use the code STUDIO, you'll get a free month's supply of their cognitive boosting supplement, Limitless, when you buy 2 bags of their coffee. That's a crazy deal. The supplement's priced higher than the coffee itself. So if you want that deal, go to 1775coffee.com, enter coupon code STUDIO, and try some amazing free speech supporting Rumble coffee. There you go. Nailed it.
Right.
Nailed it. Nailed it.
Want to plug the tour?
Yeah, let's plug the tour. Let's advertise some of this tour here. Hold on, let me find the thing. Here it is.
All right. So good news, folks. 1 ticket has opened up for Saturday night, October 26th. 1 ticket. It was sold out, but somebody had to switch to Friday. So we've got 1 ticket. So be the last kid on your block to get the ticket for Saturday night for my weird New York tour. This is my favorite tour that I created. It is covering a lot of strange, bizarre, macabre, and politically deviant history of Greenwich Village. So I'll be going to the site of the Triangle Shirtwaist Factory fire, the site of a very famous weather underground bombing in 1970 in the village, the site of a place called the of an incident called the Groovy Murders. Very big deal at its time. The kind of thing they wrote a lot of op-eds about, a lot of think pieces, but it's completely forgotten today. And the site of an MK Ultra safe house, where as part of Operation Midnight Climax, which I'm learning, actually, I didn't know this. I'm reading Chaos. I'm almost done with it now. There was a branch of that in San Francisco, but there was also a branch of it in New York, and I will take you to the safe house where they would lure unsuspecting people and dose them with LSD.
There you go.
So, very cool tour.
Dude,
get your Halloween on in that special weird way.
There you go. DoDissidents.com/tour. 1 ticket opened up for Saturday. Still some available for
And what do we
Friday.
got? We got 11 for Friday.
All right, there you go. Awesome. Make sure you get those tickets, folks. All right, we will move on. We'll take some super chats and Rumble rants. A couple more things to do on the day, folks. Let's hit that like button. Let's hit that subscribe button over on YouTube. Let's hit that follow button over on Rumble. We are at 808 likes on YouTube. That's good for one of these. There we go. Alrighty. Jeff, Yahya Sinwar was killed on the front line fighting. I just searched that to see if there's any reporting on that. I have not found anything to confirm that, but thanks for letting us know if you are ahead of the curve there. Sparky, thanks for the $5. Fun fact, Israel has killed far more Americans than Iran. Remember the USS Liberty. Sparky, go Yemen, fight the power. Sparky, thanks for the $10. Watch Sabby interview. Looked like Shiva didn't know who he was up against, but Sabby pointed out she'd interviewed him before. He must have run out of anti-narcissism meds. Sabby destroyed him. Oh, so he didn't remember that he had already been on the show? This is what I mean, man. That guy's what a fucking nut job. What a fucking nut job. The guy berates people to have him on the show, literally. Like, he'll tag. I saw him tag people. Glenn Greenwald, Jimmy Dore, they're too pussy to have me on the show. So you're saying she invited him on before and he forgot that he had been on before? Quite the guy. You know, I actually saw somebody in my neck of the woods up here in the Capital Region with a Shiva for President lawn sign.
You're kidding me.
No, I actually did see one. Yeah, I actually did see. Hold on, maybe that's his place. Maybe that's his house. Maybe he's local. But yeah, I did see that. All right. If DD ever starts a new podcast, called it The Underwire. Thank you, Exley Confidential. Appreciate that. Can someone please design a John Fetterman branded hoodie that's white with eye holes? Yeah, there you go. Thank you, Exley Confidential. Appreciate that. Let's see here. Okay. Ravid X, I asked the same question to Sam Harris on his podcast, that how the censored free speech that you are proposing is different from the one in Russia. I didn't get an answer from him. Did you submit that in writing, or do you call in? I'm assuming you would have to submit those in writing for him. Yeah. Okay, there we go. All right, everybody. We got a couple more pieces for you today. Kamala Harris sat down with Bret Baier on Fox News last night for an interview, which aired at 6 o'clock. The whole thing was about 26 minutes. We have a couple of clips that we're going to show you here. It was a pretty contentious interview. Here is the first piece where Bret Baier asks Kamala Harris to clarify what she meant by saying, essentially, that she'd do nothing different from Joe Biden if she were given the same 4 years.
Different shows last week. You were asked on 2 different shows last week, what, if anything, you would do differently than President Biden. Here's what you said. All
right, now I cut there because those 2 videos that he shows are from the most petty of copyright bullies on YouTube, The View and the Stephen Colbert Show. But basically, you've probably seen those. On The View, she can't name anything she would do different from Joe Biden. On the Stephen Colbert Show, she gives no policy differences between her and Joe Biden, but emphasizes that she's not Joe Biden, which she re-emphasizes here. So that catches you up. That brings you up to speed without getting a copyright trouble.
You're not Joe Biden, you're not Donald Trump, but nothing comes to mind that you would do differently?
Let me be very clear. My presidency will not be a continuation of Joe Biden's presidency. And
wow. I mean, okay, so we're not going to stop it every 10 seconds, but that is about as damning a rebuke of Joe Biden as you will hear. The fact that your vice president is just saying very plainly, this is not a continuation of Joe Biden's presidency. That just shows you what a weak position they've been in all along. That you're the incumbent vice president and you cannot define your future term as a continuation of the first term. Right. That explains why they're here in the first place. What did I tell you, folks? I said politics is a lot like football, especially as the clock winds down. If it's October and you're winning, what do? You do what Trump's doing. You hold the ball. Right. You stop talking about cats and dogs being eaten. You stop talking about Kamala being Indian and not black. You hold the ball and let the time run down. Well, if you're losing, what do? You throw Hail Mary passes. Appearing on Fox News for an interview, that's a Hail Mary. That's something the campaign would not do unless they felt they had to.
Right, because they know that they're being killed with men. Right. They're trying to go to places that a lot of men watch. That's why, as we'll see in the next segment, they're talking to Rogan even to try to appeal to those. Now, given who their candidate is, Kamala Harris, I guess they have no choice if the internal polls are as bad as rumored, but that's not going to help. That's like saying, well, the best way to get more men for Hillary, put Hillary on Rogan.
Right. Yeah, right. Exactly. Yeah. No, I think you're right about that. All right, here we go.
Like every new president that comes in to office, I will bring my life experiences, my professional experiences, and fresh and new ideas. I represent a new generation of leadership.
Fresh and new ideas.
for example, am someone who has not spent the majority of my career in Washington, D.C. I invite ideas, whether it be from the Republicans who are supporting me, who were just on stage with me minutes ago, and the business sector, and others who can contribute to the decisions that I make.
Okay, those aren't new ideas. Those are old ideas.
Yeah, that's it's a
neoliberalism.
Neoliberal restoration. And these are the Republicans that Republicans hate. The actual Republican voters, the media class Republicans love them. They're the same people. They just revolving door in and out of government, in and out of media, in and out of corporate boards.
Well, that's why I say
just
they're
like
old
Democrats.
ideas. They're too old for the Republican Party. The Republican Party has moved on from those ideas, trotting out these Bush-era neocons, including Liz Cheney, and you can't trot out her father. He's probably not in physical shape to go out and stump for you, but he gave you his endorsement. The Republican neocon Dick Cheney ideas, those are really, really old ideas. Those are not new ideas. Those are old ideas. The business sector, oh, that's a new idea. Politicians listening to the business sector. Wow. What new ideas?
About, for example, my plan for increasing the supply of housing in America and bringing down the cost of housing. Addressing the issue of small businesses, which is about working with the private sector to bring more capital and access to capital to our small business leaders, including my plan for a $25,000 down payment assistance for first-time home buyers and for small businesses, extending the tax deduction from $5,000 to $50,000.
We've heard a lot about those plans in recent days. Your campaign slogan is a new way forward, and it's time to turn the page. You've been vice president for 3.5 years. So what are you turning the page from?
Well, first of all, turning the page from the last decade in which we have been burdened with the kind of rhetoric coming from Donald Trump that has been designed and implemented to divide our country and have Americans literally point fingers at each other. Rhetoric and an approach to leadership that suggests that the strength of a leader is based on who you beat down instead of what we all know. The strength of leadership is based on who you lift up. The strength of an American president, which is one who understands that the vast majority of us have more in common than what separates us.
Madam Vice President, more than 70% of people
that is about turning the page on rhetoric that people are frankly exhausted of, Bret.
More than 70% of people tell the country.
Okay, so he gets to ask this question. Now, look, Bret Baier, throughout this interview, he cuts her off a lot. Now, look, I understand when you're dealing with a person who is notorious for tossing up word salad after word salad after word salad,
and filibuster,
and who has no other tactic but to filibuster because she clearly doesn't know anything that she's talking about. I do understand the impulse to try and cut her off. I do think, to be fair, he overdid it, especially towards the beginning. Yeah. He actually got a little better as it went over. But during the immigration stuff, and this is because she's so vulnerable on the issue, during the immigration stuff, it was ridiculous. Like, she couldn't get a sentence out without him cutting her off. And then it eased up a little bit. But as you can see here, still, like, you got to let her at least answer. I know it's hard because she's there to filibuster and run out the clock. But there's a balance you got to strike. And if I'm being straight and down the middle with you, I don't think he struck it very well. I think he went overboard.
I think he did too. I think it wound up coming off as unprofessional. And yeah, obviously we don't have the level of experience that Bret Baier has. We're still pretty green at this whole interview stuff. But we've done enough of it that, yeah, I get it. You have somebody like this, and it's kind of a hostile witness, right? She's here on Fox. She's done a bunch of softball interviews. You're the first person who might really challenge her. She sat down with. I get the impression they had a very strict time limit that he was working with, where you have to try to get this stuff in. At the same time, yeah, man, you're functioning as a journalist. You're not doing a Vega. You didn't run up at a Kamala event to start screaming at her. You're asking her questions. You have to let her answer the damn question.
Right.
And he did take it to the point that he wouldn't let her answer. That having been said, it is understandable because you do know that you have somebody here who, if you let them, will just run out the clock. when I was a little girl.
Yeah, right, exactly. Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
If you let her, that's what it's going to be. So it was a delicate thing, but he did cross that line quite a bit, I thought.
All right, so now here he goes asking her about the right track, wrong track question.
The country is on the wrong track. They say the country is on the wrong track. If it's on the wrong track, that track follows 3.5 years of you being vice president and President Biden being president. That is what they're saying, 79% of them.
And I'm sorry, I thought we were still on this segment. One more point I want to point out about her answer, actually. This whole public-private partnership, yeah, that is neoliberalism. That is the neoliberalism that has failed us. This whole concept, get government out of the way, which is a very Republican, Reaganite belief that wound up with the Clinton ascension to the presidency and the Clinton, what you might call the Clinton age in the Democratic Party, became the central ethos of the Democratic Party. Just a Republican idea that government should not be the ones behind these programs. It should be microloans to African women with jewelry shops in the Senegal, funded by Google.
Right. All right, so here he is asking her right track, wrong track.
Why are they saying that? If you're turning the page, you've been in office for 3.5 years.
And Donald Trump has been running for office.
But you've been the person holding
That
the
is
office.
quite the answer. I have to back this up so we get the full question. So just that makes sense. That is quite the spin there.
On the wrong track. They say the country is on the wrong track. If it's on the wrong track, that track follows 3.5 years of you being vice president and President Biden being president. That is what they're saying, 79% of them. Why are they saying that? If you're turning the page, you've been in office for 3.5 years.
And Donald Trump has been running for office.
But you've been the person holding the office.
Come on.
Madam
You
Vice
and I
President.
both know what I'm talking about. You and I both know what I'm talking about.
I actually don't. What are you talking about?
What I'm talking about is that over the last decade, people have become, but listen, over the last decade, it is clear to me, and certainly the Republicans who are on stage with me, the former chief of staff to the president, Donald Trump, former defense secretaries, national security advisor, and his vice president. One, that he is unfit to serve, that he is unstable, that he is dangerous, and that people are exhausted with someone who professes to be a leader who spends full time demeaning and engaging in personal grievances and it being about him instead of the American people. People are tired of that.
Okay, now that part, that is what their message just has to be down the stretch. They have nowhere else to go but there. That pivot from 79% say the country's on the wrong track. So how do you explain that as the incumbent vice president? She has to turn that question. And I thought she did so fairly skillfully there, despite the original awkwardness of being like, well, he's been running for president. What their message has to be down the stretch is that people are exhausted by Donald Trump's antics. It's a very normie pitch to those moderate, fairly affluent, suburban, low information voters who follow politics at the margins and who are just tired of the Trump show. Like, that is what they're going to close on. It's the only thing they can close on. As demonstrated throughout this interview and throughout the whole campaign, they have no record to run on. The only thing they could do is try to peel off as many of those suburbanites who are offended and exhausted. She even uses the word exhausted. I think that's a key word, by Trump's bad manners, and hope that they can keep the polls close enough to the point where if they can peel off just enough of those voters in just enough places, they'll win. It's possible they will succeed in that. It's looking less likely, as evidenced by the fact that she's on this show in the first place. This is a 50-yard pass over the middle of the field. You don't throw that pass unless you feel you have to. A campaign confident that it is in a position to win, she would have never sat down with Bret Baier in the first place. Not in a million years.
Of course not. At first, when they thought they had it in the bag, she wouldn't sit down with anybody.
Right, exactly.
They wouldn't do interviews with anyone if they had their way. No, it's definitely a sign of desperation. But also, if you look at the whole formulation, the idea that it is Donald Trump who is uniquely prone to finger pointing or making Americans hate each other, the whole liberal class ethos is about the deplorables, the dummies, the bigots, the racists, the homophobes, the sexists that we have to save the country from. And the best thing they might say about them is they're undereducated. We have to fix the education so that these people get their mind right. The idea that this is uniquely Trumpian and a result of Donald Trump's appearance in the political scene is absolutely ridiculous. Watch a night of MSDNC, which is certainly the house organ of the Democratic Party. Nothing goes on that network that has not been approved by Democratic leadership. What is it? It's an entire night of the racists are under your bed and the sexists are in your closet and the homophobes are your neighbors and they're all coming for everything that's decent and right.
Right. Yeah, absolutely. All right, folks. So we have one other clip that we're going to show you guys from Kamala Harris's interview with Bret Baier on Fox News. This is where Bret Baier presses Kamala on Joe Biden's mental fitness, because obviously throughout this interview, she kept sort of pivoting to Donald Trump's unfitness to serve, when obviously the elephant in the room is that the reason you're the nominee and not Joe Biden is because he's too old and mentally unfit to serve. So as his partner over these past 4 years, he asks of Kamala, when did you get the sense, if at any point, that something was not right with Joe Biden?
You call Donald Trump, he's misguided. You say now
he's
unstable.
He is unstable, Bret.
He's not well. You say he's mentally not stable.
He's not stable.
Let me ask you this. You told many interviewers that Joe Biden was on his game, that ran around circles on his staff. When did you first notice that President Biden's mental faculties appeared diminished?
Joe Biden, I have watched from the Oval Office to the Situation Room. And he has the judgment and the experience to do exactly what he has done in making very important decisions on behalf of the American people.
There were no concerns raised?
Brett, Joe Biden is not on the ballot.
I understand.
And Donald Trump.
So why can't he run again? If he's good, then
why
can't
running?
he run again? Yeah, then
why are you running? Why are you the candidate?
Why are you the candidate, not him? Like that's the circle they just cannot square. Right? Like, if what you're saying is true, then why are you here? Why isn't he talking to Joe Biden?
They cannot admit that the man who is still the serving president of the United States is non compos mentis.
Exactly. And look, if Kamala loses, which is now statistically slightly more likely than not, slightly, I want to emphasize, don't go betting any money. Don't bet your house on either candidate, folks. It's a very, very close election.
There's a tough one. Honestly, I feel like if you were paying attention, if you were connecting the dots, 2016 was easier to call than this one.
Yeah, probably.
If you had your ear to the ground, you could see that there was a decent chance Trump would win. This one, who knows?
Yeah, who knows? Because in 2016, the only real hidden vote was the Trump vote. Here, post-Roe, there is a hidden Democrat vote as well. And so that makes this... Obviously,
that's what makes it the Roe factor
much more difficult. But if Kamala loses, there's going to be a lot of Monday morning quarterbacking. Should they have swapped Biden out for Kamala, or should they have let Biden run? You know they're going to ask that question. When the right question to ask is, should Biden have announced 2 years ago that he wasn't running? We'll see which question gets more airtime. Is it, should Biden have stayed in the race, or should he have gotten out 2 years ago? The obvious answer is he should have announced on Inauguration Day that he was a one-term, that he was only sticking there for one term, so they could have had a primary to vet someone who was more capable of running a campaign than this, because this obviously is not workable. The only reason they might get away with it is because of the short-term time window and the fact that you have a hidden pro-choice vote coast to coast and everywhere in between. And so, those are the two things that may bail you out. But if this goes sideways, there's going to be a lot of second guessing in a lot of different directions.
And
it all stems back to Biden's unfitness. That's what it all comes down to. How should they have managed that? It looks like they managed it exactly the wrong way.
And Joe Biden, being the pissed off, jilted, nasty bastard he is, if she loses, I would not put it past him in a lucid moment to say, well, they thought it was a good idea to get rid of me. Well,
oh yeah, well, no, he'll definitely throw some shade if she loses. No doubt about that. There's no doubt in my mind about that.
Yeah,
talked about it.
And Donald Trump
after George Clooney said within a few minutes of talking to President Biden at a fundraiser that he thought this was not the same Joe Biden that we saw on the debate stage.
Donald Trump is on the ballot.
I understand. You met with him at least once a week for 3.5 years. You didn't have any concerns?
I think the American people have a concern about Donald Trump, which is why the people who know him best, including leaders of our nation.
That's everything. You notice she didn't say no when he said, so you had no concerns about him over the past 3.5 years. She takes a deep breath. I'm concerned about Donald Trump. She did not answer the question. She never said no. I thought he was good.
Yes. She can't say yes.
Yeah, but no, but she didn't lie. She didn't lie. She didn't say no. I never noticed anything was off. I thought he was good to go. Right? You would think she might just lie.
It.
And
she ducked it.
She ducked it.
Well, because she knows she makes herself sound ridiculous. If she says no, always seems sharp as a tack, she sounds ridiculous. If she says yes, that is national news. Biden's VP acknowledges he is not fit to serve.
Right.
Now, what do? Do you invoke the 25th Amendment?
Right.
Yeah. January's a long way away with all the war going on, right? I mean, it's a serious question whether you have to remove him from office once she acknowledges that.
Yeah.
Right now, they're just pretending. They're pretending that there's nothing wrong with having a president who's not aware of where he is half the day in office.
Right. Yep. Absolutely. All right. Sparky, thanks for the $5. No, Sabby pointed out to me that Shiva had been on before when I suggested that Shiva didn't know who he was up against. Right, but he was on her show before? Or was that the first time? What effect will the October 24th BRICS summit, asks Sparky, have on Israel's bellicosity or bellicosity? How do you say that? I know it's bellicose, but is bellicosity or is it bellicosity?
I would say bellicosity, but I'm probably not the best person.
I think bellicosity is probably
I would say bellicosity.
And Miss Deeds, will BRICS take active steps toward peace in the Middle East? I think they probably will. That would be my guess. RBGH fam, thanks for the $5. Kamala Harris is nothing more than pre-beta version alpha of Hillary Clinton. LTS, thanks for the $5. Donald Trump, Donald Trump, Donald Trump. Thanks, LTS. Appreciate that very much. All right, folks, we have one more segment of the day, but before we do that, obviously, we have to take a game break for you, our supporters, the backbone of this program. So to be one of the cool kids and join the supporter team, you can go to patreon.com/dudissidents, dudissidents.substack.com, or you can join our locals, dudissidents.locals.com. We're pushing the locals hard. If you're watching on Rumble now, you can click that join button underneath the video player. That takes you to our locals page. Everybody else, dudissidents.locals.com to become a member. Member perks are quite a lot now. You're going to get supporter streams, live streams exclusive to supporters where you will have call-in access. You will also have your name up in lights on the show notes. You'll get call-in access to our Q&As every week after the show, every Sunday night. You will also get live stream access when we can make that available, if the interview is going to be long enough to be worthwhile, obviously, to our pre-recorded interviews. So we have a pre-recorded interview slated for early next week. We are going to live stream that to our members. And so join dudissidents.locals.com. You could also join our Patreon or our Substack. patreon.com/dudissidents or dudissidents.substack.com. Your support is what keeps this program afloat. It is super important to the viability of this project. To drive membership, we really try our best to make it worth your while. We're going to start our film club a week from Monday. So I think the 1 week from this Monday will be our first episode of the Dissident Members Film Club, and that'll be a Halloween-themed movie just a couple days before Halloween. So we really sweetened the deal. If you can join, please do. It helps us out tremendously. You guys are the backbone of the show. We say it every time because we mean it every time. Locals, there's a Substack link, and here's the Patreon link. Dealer's choice. Join anywhere you like, but if you can sign up, it helps us tremendously. Thank you all very much for your support. Kuznetsky Bassane, thanks for the $4.99. I want to be very clear. You and I know what I'm talking about. We need to be unburdened from the burdens of the past. I am open to fresh new ideas. Thank you, Kuznetsky Bassane. Good one. Cool Blue, thanks for the $10. Hey, Cool Blue, can you email us about November 5th? We need you to be our
he did email us.
Oh, he did? Okay.
Yeah,
I apologize then.
You missed it.
I must have missed it. We're getting so many emails.
We also got a bunch of emails piling up about T-shirts.
Yeah, I know. I have to have Jake put them in a folder because I'm going to send them out tomorrow and Saturday. For a party that figures it is superior in intelligence and insight, the Democrats are tone deaf. They have no argument for why they should be allowed to continue having the presidency the next 4 years. Of course. Thank you, Cool Blue. Appreciate that very much. All righty. We got a couple more super chats. We will clear the queue after this, our final segment of the day, folks. So we just showed you Kamala Harris on Fox News. Kamala Harris trying to close the gender gap. Yes, not amongst women. She already has a decent lead amongst women, but she's really hurting amongst men. And so Kamala Harris flirting with a voyage into the manosphere. Kamala Harris could join Joe Rogan podcast in hunt for male voters, sources say. Democratic presidential nominee Kamala Harris could sit down for an interview with popular podcaster Joe Rogan, whose audience leans heavily towards young men as she works to shore up support with male voters, sources said on Monday. Harris campaign officials in the final stretch of the presidential campaign met with Rogan's team this week, but an appearance has not yet been confirmed, said two of the sources who have knowledge of the matter. Rogan, who runs the most popular podcast in the United States, has a highly coveted and devoted following that numbers in the tens of millions. The interview will offer Harris an opportunity to make her case to his followers as she works to shore up support with male voters and black men in particular. Numerous public polls suggest Republican nominee Donald Trump could outperform among young men of all races. That would be not necessarily a historic first, but a first in a while, a first in a very long time. Young voters, male, female, black, white, almost always vote Democrat overwhelmingly. So if young men of all races put everything together, go to Trump, that would be very significant. This is why the Democrats, not to get sidetracked, we don't want to go too off message here, but this is why they make such an appeal to those old Bush-era Republicans, because they're bleeding Latino support, they're bleeding black support in this election especially, they're bleeding Arab support, they're bleeding youth support. They have to make those voters up. Now you say, well, there aren't enough of those neocon Republican voters to make up for all of these other voters who they're losing. It doesn't look like that's enough, because if you look at America as a whole, it's not enough. But among people who vote,
they vote disproportionately.
Exactly. Those Bush neocon moderate, independents who used to lean Republican, now may lean Democrat, they vote. So when you convert one of them to your cause, that's like converting 7 young people to your cause, because they vote so much more often. That's why they've kept this race as close as it is, despite all of these trends going the wrong way.
Well, also remember, in spite of the impression that you might get from hysteria or celebration, depending on which side of the aisle you're talking about, of demographic changes in the country, and the future where whites are no longer a majority. Last I saw, 70% of voters are still white.
Right.
That's a lot of fucking people. So if you gain 5% of the black vote, but the Democrats gain 2% of the white vote, it cancels it out.
Yeah. I see someone in the chat saying no data to support Keaton. Actually, all the data supports what I just said. Actually, every single piece of data supports what I just said. All right. Slight correction there. You say no data, I say all data. On Monday, the vice president released a new set of policy proposals to appeal to black male voters, and her campaign is ramping up outreach to the typically Democratic voting group. On Monday, Trump also indicated he plans to go on Joe Rogan's podcast before Election Day on November 5th. So Donald Trump's going to go on Rogan's show before November 5th. He really is closing on a podcast run. What did he do? Andrew Schultz. He did Theo Vaughn a few weeks ago. He did Lex Friedman, right? He's a little loud for the Lex Friedman show. They must have to turn his mic down.
I would think.
Imagine waking up from a nap to him going on to Lex Friedman. Trump and Rogan have sparred in the past. As recently as August, Trump took a shot at Rogan on social media platform Truth Social, but later called him a good guy. That's because Rogan spoke fondly of RFK before RFK endorsed Trump. That's what the basis of that little mini feud was. In 2022, Rogan said he's not a Trump supporter, and in August said he preferred RFK for president. Kennedy has since dropped out of the race and endorsed Donald Trump, of course. The appearance could offer a shot in the arm for Harris and Trump, as polls show an incredibly tight race between the two candidates that is expected to come down to the results in 7 swing states. Okay, that's not good. They go on. We don't have to read the rest of that. The idea that her appearing on Rogan would be a shot in the arm for her is pretty absurd. All that's going to do is create 4 hours worth of viral clips that show how ridiculous she is. Unless Rogan just decides to do one of his typical shows with her. He doesn't have to talk politics. Rogan will be like, hey, have you seen this? There's this island off the coast of India where they crack open a crocodile's skull and they drain the brain fluids out and you drink it and it gives you tremendous upper body mass. Have you tried that? I want to go. Maybe he should just talk about that shit with her. That'd be the best she could hope for. Because if he actually asks her questions, that's not gonna come out looking good for her. I can guarantee you that.
She goes on Rogan. If she does it with enough lead time, at least 2 weeks before the election, she can demonstrate that her economic policies are already working for podcasters who will see such a tremendous influx of ad revenue off their clips of that they'll have to vote for Kamala. They'll have to urge their viewers to vote for Kamala, just considering the ad revenue to be made off of a Kamala presidency.
Yeah. Yeah. I just can't imagine them saying yes to that. They say they're considering it. Again, this is how the trends are going the wrong way for her.
Are going to kill it. I don't think they're going to do it after that Fox interview.
This is why I'm saying the trends are moving away from her, because if you're even considering going on Joe Rogan's podcast, you surely must feel you're in desperate need of more votes. Because look, Rogan is one of the people who, like, the K-Hive types have the most disdain for of anybody. He's the anti-vax, he's this, he's that, whatever.
3 hours of Kamala Harris.
I don't know if she'd give him 3 hours. Remember when Bernie went on? It was like for an hour. Imagine she gives him 20 minutes. It's the shortest episode of Joe Rogan ever. Yeah. Maybe he should split the episode. He'll do 2 hours with her and then bring in Alex Jones or somebody to fill the rest of the time. Because I can't imagine she would do 3 hours.
No,
but
he should totally do a Jerry Springer. 20 minutes into the interview, bring in Alex Jones.
Yeah, bring in Alex Jones. Have him come in and have a seat. Hey, nice to meet you. I think I can't imagine. I cannot imagine how that would go well. The fact that they're even considering it, it's not like Bret Baier. Fox News, it's a hostile environment, sure. But like Rogan is like basically on the Mount Rushmore of most loathed figures by like the kind of liberal class base that supports Kamala Harris, right? So it's really kind of crazy that they're even entertaining it. Again, this kind of shows you that in the final weeks of the campaign, the macro dynamics are starting to really show themselves in a way that's affecting the polling. And Donald Trump, has had his act more or less together the past 3 weeks. Really, since the Haitian migrant fiasco, he really hasn't stepped in it since then, since the dogs and cats?
No, they've been very on message about immigration, not the dogs and cats element of immigration, but the jobs and housing element of immigration.
Yeah, exactly. All right. Kuznetsky Bassane, rotting empire equals word salad and dementia and salvation by Orange Billionaire. Thank you, Kuznetsky Bassane. Is that all we got in Rumble Rants? I believe we got one more here. Sunrise Home Office denies Nelson Mandela's grandson entry to UK for pro-Palestinian talks. Interesting. We will have to look into that as well before Sunday. Folks, that is our show. Thank you very much for waking up with us this morning. We appreciate you being here. This is not the last you'll see of us today. We are premiering our interview with Jill Stein tonight at 8 p.m. on YouTube and Rumble. Join our newsletter at dudissidents.substack.com and you will get emailed to you personally a link to watch that interview on the platform of your choice. Like I said, it'll air it on YouTube and Rumble at the same time. We thank you very much for being here today. Appreciate our YouTubers, appreciate our Rumblers. Smash that like button on the way out on both YouTube and Rumble. If you're on Rumble, smash that follow button. We are approaching 20,000 Rumble followers. That's a cool milestone.
Nice.
So yes, smash that follow button on Rumble. Smash that subscribe button here on YouTube, and we will be hanging out in the chat tonight for the Jill Stein interview. So we'll chat with some of you then, and we'll see you all live again this Sunday night, October 20th, 7 p.m. Eastern for our flagship Sunday night live stream. Until then, thanks very much for being here with us this morning, everybody. We appreciate you very much. Be safe and be well.
Courage!
Please clap.